Schools Board of Education, I want to begin by acknowledging the Native American nations on whose land we stand. Oklahoma is home to 39 federally recognized Native American tribes, and our district serves students belonging to more than 50 tribes. The city of Tulsa sits on the boundaries of the Cherokee Nation, Muskogee Creek Nation, and the Osage Nation. We recognize their history and commitment to our community and the land on which they settled, and we honor them. We begin our meeting with gratitude, appreciation, and respect. I want to welcome all of my fellow board members here with me tonight. Those of you at home will see Zoom tiles for board and for staff. Although there are Zoom tiles for all of the board members are physically present at this meeting as well. I have asked that only the staff critical to the function of this meeting are here in person, and that the majority of staff supporting this meeting participate remotely to limit the number of people in the Selman. This will allow us to set up the room following safe distancing guidelines, and at the same time, allow those of our community who wish to attend in person to be able to do so as safely as possible. I hope that all of you who chose to be present at tonight's board meeting had the opportunity to review the health screening questionnaire and instructions posted on the district webpage, and that you chose to participate remotely if you answered yes to any of the questions listed. As posted, the following safety protocols are in place for all attending in person. Visitors will have their temperature checked. They will be asked to sign the attendance sheet to allow for contact tracing and notification in the event there is a COVID-19 exposure. Attendees will be required to wear a mask. Attendees are expected to adhere to safe distancing, which is a minimum of 6 feet apart. I want to remind those who are wishing to address the board to sign up with board clerk Sarah Bazone sitting to my left. There is also a link on our webpage for those wishing to sign up and give their comments via telephone. There's a 5-minute limit to those comments, and I want to remind speakers that, in accordance with board policy, staff and board members will not enter into a dialogue with speakers during the board meeting. Upon approval of the consent agenda, no additional speaker requests will be accepted. I would like to let the audience know that we have 2 ASL interpreters at tonight's meeting via live stream. We also have closed captioning and Spanish translation services available for those viewing the board meeting on channel 20. In addition, we will also have Spanish translation services available through our live stream of the board meeting on Facebook. To follow tonight's meeting in Spanish, please visit our Spanish language Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Escuelas Públicas de Tulsa. You'll find a Facebook Live video with real-time translation. Thank you to our translation services team for ensuring that our meeting is accessible to Spanish speakers. Mr. Robles, would you please announce the availability of interpretation services through the website?
Absolutely. Para seguir la reunión de esta tarde en español, por favor visiten nuestra página en español de Facebook en www.facebook.com/Escuelas Públicas de Tulsa. Ahí encontrarán un video en vivo en Facebook con traducción simultánea. Muchas gracias a nuestro equipo de servicios de traducción por asegurarse de que nuestras familias puedan acceder a esta reunión en español.
Thank you, Mr. Robles. Let's begin the meeting by calling roll of the board members to assure a quorum is present and the meeting is qualified to consider the agenda items. Pastor Marshall.
Present.
Ms. Barbara Perez.
Present.
Ms. Schreiber.
Here.
Mr. Croissant.
Present.
Ms. Keller.
Present.
Dr. Griffin.
Present.
And I am here as well. I would like to make a note for those of you both here and online that Ms. Barbara Perez elected to stay home today due to some concerns she has. She's got a pretty decent cough, and out of an abundance of caution, followed our safety protocols and is joining us via Zoom. So a majority of the board is present, and we are therefore able to consider our agenda items because we do have a quorum present. Dr. Gist, will you lead us in the flag salute?
I will indeed. Salute, or stand, salute, and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Gist. Do you have any changes to tonight's agenda?
I do, Madam President, members of the board. We have a small correction to item F1 in the last sentence of the rationale. There's a small clerical error. Instead of a decimal point, there's a comma in the dollar amount. It's $12.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Second. Thank you. I'll now call for the vote. Dr. Griffin?
Aye.
Ms. Keller? Aye. Mr. Croissant?
Aye.
Ms. Schreiber? Aye. Ms. Barbara Perez?
See?
Pastor Marshall?
Aye.
And aye. Dr. Gist, do you have any special presentations for us this evening?
I do. I have two special presentations this evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Tulsans. I'm so incredibly excited about these presentations. And first, we're going to feature some awesome news, some new and more awesome news about work that's been happening at McLean High School. February was actually Career and Technical Education Month. And so we started at that time working on some information that we wanted to share program-wise, but there's been so much that has been going on. But fortunately, since every month is Career and Technical Education Month, we're thrilled to be able to bring it to you all tonight. So we're going to have the chance to hear all about the new Tulsa Technology Foundations of Manufacturing program at McLean High School. Just some quick background. As you all know, Tulsa Tech has long been a trusted and important partner of Tulsa Public Schools. And the number of our students enrolled in Tulsa Tech programs has significantly increased in recent years. And in addition to the many programs they offer on their own campuses, to which our children can travel, Tulsa Tech instructors also teach programs that are embedded in some of our own high schools. And a little more than a year ago, the Tulsa Tech board committed to starting a new program at McLean High School. I could not be prouder of both Principal Rabowski and her team, as well as our partners at Tulsa Tech, for starting this program despite these extremely trying times. I also want to just say, I know that Pastor Marshall has a particular interest in this kind of programming, and she may want to say more about that, but we're grateful for her support of this work as well. Career and technical education has grown in recent years, as I said, and this example is going to provide you with a really glorious example of like the work that's happening in Tulsa Public Schools. Importantly, it's important to note that this is not your grandfather's career and technical education, in that there are some really high-tech opportunities and pathways, including those that are pathways to college for those who are interested. And yet the heart of career and technical education, which is about real-world learning and preparation for careers, remains solidly intact. So we are joined by McLean Principal Renee Rabowski and Vice Principal Maurice Walker, as well as some of our colleagues from Tulsa Tech. We have Robert Franklin, who's the Associate Superintendent, Mark Bird, who's the Director of High School Extension Programs, and Emily Simons, the Programs Instructor, who has worked very hard to start this program in distance learning under some very difficult circumstances. So thank you so much, Emily, everyone on the team at McLean, everyone at Tulsa Tech. And I am going to turn it over to Principal Rabowski and Vice Principal Walker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gist, and to the board. Thank you guys for letting us come and speak about some fantastic things happening in TPS, actually, and specifically tonight about McLean. I would be remiss if I said Mr. Walker is out for a couple of weeks, so he's not able to join us, but he has given his whole heart in for this program, and I definitely have to make sure that I shout out his hard work. But as some of you may know, and some of you may not, having a Tulsa Tech program at McLean has been something that has been dreamed about and talked about since I started at McLean, for sure. And I'm sure it was even before that. It's not something that just just students are talking about. It's something that has come up from families, teachers, staff, TPS personnel, alumni, community members. It is just something we have wanted and talked about for so long. And when we found out last year we were getting a Foundations of Manufacturing program, we were ecstatic. It fit perfectly into our vision of providing an innovative and relevant education for our students. And ultimately, we knew that it could be a game changer for our students. We know that our real goal is success. Well, success in high school is important, but our real goal is that we want our students to be successful when they leave us and have opportunities when they leave us, and they no longer have our daily support. But then COVID hit, and we got nervous. Were we worried? Would this work? Could we do it? Were we ready? But somehow, with the dedication of the entire Tulsa Tech group, the McLean faculty, and specifically our Foundations and Manufacturing teacher, Ms. Simons, somehow they have made it work. And in fact, we even have a few students that have received paid internships, and that was before we came back in person. So I can only imagine how difficult it was being in Ms. Simons' position, coming in and trying to make it work. But we are so lucky and so grateful that we have her on our team, and we are so excited to continue this partnership and continue to offer this amazing opportunity for years to come. And I am going to turn it over to Mr. Robert Franklin.
Hey, colleagues, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Give me a little thumbs up on my end of things if I can. Okay, if you can hear me, okay. Thank you very much. Hey, Principal Hrabowski, what a superstar you are. And, you know, there's a few things in life as an educator that get you excited. Well, I say that wrong. There's a lot of things that get you excited as an educator. I mean, then there's a few things that will make you emotionally get chill bumps. And this is one of those moments, because we've talked about this opportunity at McLean for a number of years. And there were folks who doubt of, is this the right program? Is this the right time? But Superintendent Gist is a champion. In fact, I think I still have a few bruises from where she said, not just one, Dr. Franklin, but let's go with a couple of these programs. Our students deserve this opportunity and they need this opportunity. And she couldn't be more right. And so we're extremely excited that we have landed where we are. We've spent some good resources. The time that we spent planning was well worth it. Dominique Dressel is a jewel and a treasure for Tulsa Public Schools. Give him a pat on the back. Taylor Hill Taylor, even back in several years ago, was very formative in this discussion. So with all that said, let's go through just a couple of quick slides. I serve as the Associate Superintendent in charge of student affairs, work with Dr. Steve Tiger and our 7-member board. And again, they were very instrumental, our board was, of leaning in with our partnership with Tulsa Public. In fact, over 55 years ago, we grew out of Tulsa Public Schools. So we feel like Tulsa Public Schools is our kindred spirit. So just a real quick snapshot. McLean High Schools is our district's 4th high school embedded at a Tulsa Tech program. We've got Foundations of Manufacturing at McLean as described, Principles of Engineering at Tulsa Memorial, Foundations of Manufacturing, which is a mirror program of what we've got at McLean, and that's at East Central. And we have a Principles of Engineering. These are Principles of Engineering programs, or Project Lead the Way. If you know anything about Project Lead the Way, you can go online and study a little bit more about Project Lead the Way. But again, that's at Edison. So Edison and Memorial have mirrors of one another, as does McLean and East Central in the manufacturing sector. So we've been on a tear over the last decade. You can see about 166% increase in high school enrollment in our extension programs over the last 8 years. You can see those numbers down at the bottom, and that's a very intentional effort. We have programs across the county, and again, we have 4 at Tulsa Public Schools. So if we could go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about that investment, of what that looks like. These are your taxpayer dollars. just like they're my taxpayer dollars. And you can see from a building investment, over 2.5 million in those high school extension programs. From an instructional budget, well, about 2.5 million on the instructional side of that. And then annually, once we get things rolling, it's about 171,000 operational budget annually. So people say, well, how much did you spend at McLean to get things off the ground? Well, it was a little over $300,000 to get things. Again, these are not my dollars. These are not just Tulsa Tech dollars. These are your taxpayer dollars funneled through the Tulsa Tech funding formula that went in partnership with you at Tulsa Public Schools to put this in at Tulsa McLean. And so if we can switch to the next slide, again, that was just the $300,000 was just on the remodel. We've also spent a good amount of money on the equipment, and we'll let the instructor speak a little bit about that. And I think we have some slides that can kind of just give you just a snapshot of what it looks like there. But what I think is also really important, and I mentioned Taylor Hill Taylor's name, I mentioned Superintendent Gist's name, and a lot of other of your principals and your counselors throughout your organization who have leaned in with us and said, we've got to do this more robustly at Tulsa Public Schools. For heaven's sakes, we grew out of, Tulsa Technology Team grew out of Tulsa Public Schools. And you can see in 2012-13, 496 students were taking advantage of programming at Tulsa Tech. And that was a call to action. And we knew we had to do things differently. And we have leaned in to do things with your transportation department to try and change some enrollment practices, to do a better job of recruitment with our marketing materials and those types of things. And you can see that we've essentially doubled that in 1920. I don't have all the official numbers of what's there this year. And again, I think we can all relate to the fact that the pandemic has kicked us in the pants on that. But, you know, our goal is, man, if we could get to 1,000, if we could get to 1,000 students at TPS being served in all of our career tech programs, that's on our campuses, our 6 big campuses that most of you know that they're located throughout the county, as well as those high school extension programs, we would be feeling like we've kind of hit a milestone, and we're not going to relent until we get to that place. So again, if we could slip to the next slide and just talk a little bit about why manufacturing and why McLean. Certainly, this is a very hands-on program that if you go particularly on the eastern side of our county and to the northern part of our county, there's been a really big footprint in the manufacturing sectors. You know, you get on that 169 corridor and you see a lot of manufacturing plants who've come here. That's all about getting skilled and trained and strong employees to meet that need. And that was one of the things that drew us toward that. A manufacturer came to Tulsa Public, or came to Tulsa, Greenheck, and said, we want to be in North Tulsa. In fact, we want to be at McLean as a partner, and we want to figure out how to develop internship initiatives with you. So that was largely a part of why Tulsa Public said, hey, where can we land these programs and best fit them? And so you can see that the Tulsa Chamber, we use the research that they have created in tandem with us to say, what are the industries and where's the job growth and the employee base that needs to come? And manufacturing is that targeted sector. You know that manufacturing has a footprint in so many different sectors, whether it's in aerospace or whether it's oil and gas or a number of CNC machining and manufacturing of parts. It's just a pervasive kind of program, and people make really healthy livings in these sectors with the right training. And so again, we felt like this was the right place. We felt like it was the right opportunity, taking full advantage of that. Next slides, I think you can see some of the pictures. And while those pictures just kind of flow through, let me tell you probably the most critical piece of the puzzle, beyond having a great principal and a great district who's trying to support it, and that is getting students, the right students in the right seats. But if you don't have the right instructor, look out. And so this is not a colleague, and I'm going to introduce her here in just about 2 seconds, that was not just applying for the job. We actually recruited her. She is a learned and very strong engineer in her own right. She's been trained at some of the foremost universities in this country. We are lucky to have her in Tulsa. We were lucky to snag her, and we recruited her and said, this has your name written all over it. She's taught university students. So for students at McLean to have an opportunity to get at her footsteps and at her fingertips, it's a pretty incredible opportunity. And again, good things are starting to happen. You just heard Principal Hrabowski speak to within the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've got students going on paid internships. So business and industry partners leaning in with us, Workforce Tulsa leaning in with us. It's just been really, really nice. So Emily Simons, I want to introduce you. Are you with us, my friend? And I'm going to turn it over to you to let you talk about, because this is the key, not Robert Franklin, not Superintendent Tiger, not our board, this teacher and your principal and your team. This is the difference maker. So Emily Simons, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, I'm going to turn it to you. And then board members, again, just thank you so much for the opportunity to be a partner with you. So Emily, take it away, friend.
All right. Thank you both, first of all, and thank you everybody for having me here. I'm really happy to be here and talk about this amazing program. I would say that my favorite thing about the program is that every student learns differently, as we know, and not every student has the opportunity to explore all those different avenues of learning. And this program really provides access to alternative learning styles, so that bright students with a lot of potential that's maybe untapped, they just haven't found that thing they connect with yet, they're able to succeed. And that's all through all this technology that Tulsa Tech and McLean have partnered up to give us access to. We have laser cutters and 3D printers, virtual welders, all sorts of machining tools. And it's just endless opportunities to find passion in students and turn those passions into a reality. And it really helps these students. I can already see it helps them see another way, a way to further educate themselves after graduation through something affordable like Tulsa Tech. It helps them see a way to create a sustainable career beyond what they thought the box of their future would be. And so I'm just really happy to see the community already rallying and really getting excited about the program. Students who are not even at McLean yet have come to my room and been like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to come to McLean next year. In 2 years, I'll be at McLean and I want to be a part of this program. So it's just really heartwarming and uplifting to see the community already embracing the program, even in this trying time of a pandemic. So I'm just really happy to be a part of it. And I know it'll be a very successful program in the future.
Superintendent Gist, we'll turn it back to you and let your board ask any questions that they feel like might be appropriate. I know our time is limited here, but again, we are so blessed to have Emily Simons as a trained engineer. She's a design specialist. She is absolutely incredible. And I know that sounds just like I'm placating because she's here, but listen, I'm talking about this is the month that we celebrate women and their footprint in our workforce and what they do. This is one of those kind of colleagues that is a difference maker for young people. And we couldn't be more proud that she's on our team. So Superintendent Gist, we'll turn it back to you to kind of field any questions and the like, if there are any.
Thank you so much. And actually, since this is a special presentation rather than a staff report, we're not able to have a discussion about it, but I'll follow up with the board, and I'm guessing there may be interest. I would love to bring this back as a staff report and really talk in total about the amazing career and technical education programs we have district-wide. So I'm getting some nods, so it looks like something that we should do. I want to just thank you, Robert, so much, you and Dr. Tiger, everyone at Tulsa Tech. It's really impressive. And I'm so happy that you shouted out other members of the team, including Dominic, who is, I know, on the Zoom somewhere. A lot of work happened in a relatively short period of time, even though it was many years building up. And then, of course, when COVID hit, made it even that much more complicated. So we're so thrilled about the work. So excited to have Ms. Simons on board, and just really wonderful, wonderful, wonderful progress. And thanks again to Principal Hrabowski and everyone at McLean.
Superintendent Guest, last comment, and I promise you I'll be off here, but March the 12th is the deadline for our, what we call our priority deadline for all applications for Tulsa Public Schools. So anybody who's online here, who's watching, who has a student who may be even remotely interested, whether that's an adult student or whether it's a secondary student, hey, go online to tulsatech.edu, fill out that application, because you've got to get your name into the pot to even be considered to be a part of our team. So again, March 12th is our deadline. So let's do this.
I'm so glad you raised that. So I'm just going to underscore that. So if you have even an interest, a student or an adult in the programs available at Tulsa Tech, which are hands-on, exciting, and ready to prepare you for some amazing careers, that deadline is March 12th. So we'll make sure that we get something out about that even more broadly tomorrow. And thank you again to all of you. Very exciting. Really appreciate it. Okay. Moving on to our next presentation. As the board knows, we made an explicit effort to engage with the community to stand up opportunities for families when we started our year in distance learning. We wanted to make sure that no family needed to choose between their own livelihood and making sure their child had a safe place to enjoy other students in a safe way, but also to have support for their distance learning. So I'm thrilled to have an update on what's been happening with that work and how it's actually growing. So as you know, we have these citywide efforts to support the childcare and learning centers while we were in distance learning. And so we worked with many organizations and agencies across the city to support those families. So this was a partnership with Tulsa Public Schools and Impact Tulsa. Of course, the Opportunity Project, which is serving as an out-of-school time intermediary, as it's known in education circles, the Tulsa Area United Way, the YMCA, the Tulsa County, the City of Tulsa, and so many other community-based organizations all across the city. Did I say Tulsa County? Tulsa County, I'll say it again because it's an important partner. The City of Tulsa, especially the Parks and Recreation Department, who's been incredible partners in this work. And all of this was an effort to bring together resources and work with one another to continue to expand equitable and low or no cost options for families. So as I said, the Opportunity Project has contributed immensely to these efforts, and they are here with us tonight to share some updates, some lessons learned, and also to tell us more about the incredible work that they are doing all year round. So I want to welcome the Executive Director of the Opportunity Project, Ms. Caroline Shaw, and our Director of Expanded Learning for Tulsa Public Schools, Debbie Medley. So I think I'm turning it over to Ms. Shaw first.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Gist. We really, really appreciate being here, and President Woolley and the board and all the community that's joining us. Can everybody hear me? We good? Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, as you said, my name is Caroline Shaw, and I'm the Executive Director of the Opportunity Project. And I am grateful to be here with my colleague on the district side, Debbie Medley, who's the Director of Expanded Learning. And Debbie's going to join us here in a few minutes to talk a little bit more about some of the specific COVID response work that the district partnered with the community on. So we're really looking forward to having her update us on that. What I'd love to do is to be able to just start a little bit and tell you about what the Opportunity Project is. So if we can go to the next slide, I can give you a little bit of an overview. Oftentimes when we talk about an OSTI or an out of school time intermediary, we start with asking folks in the room, what is the most memorable experience that you had as a young person? So whether that was over the summer or after school or during the school day, and most of the time the answers that we get are around experiences that young people have had and have shaped them even into adulthood, with a camp counselor, a youth group leader, a coach, someone who took a special interest in them. And that's really what out of school time learning is all about. Those experiences that shape you, that help you discover your passions. And so that's what we are here to help establish and promote throughout the city and the community. So one of the things that an OSTI does is really capitalize on research and data that demonstrates the effectiveness and the importance of this kind of learning. So this timeline just kind of gives you a little bit of a history of where the field started and where it is today. So you can look here and see that all the way back to the early 90s, there was starting to be a body of evidence, a body of research that really connected positive youth development experiences with these kinds of out of school time rich learning opportunities in childhood. As time progressed and people started to see again that this was a demonstrated positive effect on academic outcomes and on youth development, you start to see individual organizations, foundations, and the education community really start galvanizing, rallying around this idea. The Wallace Foundation, which is a foundation out of New York City, took a special interest in out of school time and launched the first OSTI or intermediary in Providence, Rhode Island, someplace that I know is close to Dr. Gist's heart. So we are taking that learning from all the way back into the early 2000s and really leveraging that. So one of the things that the Wallace Foundation discovered in doing their research and exploring across the country what was working and what wasn't working was what they called a possible solution. So they said one possible solution to getting millions of urban children around the country the opportunity to have these experiences is to coordinate the work of programs, government agencies, private funders, and others involved in after school and summer programs to build an after school system that is greater than the sum of its parts. That's exactly what we're doing to this day. So we have benefited from all of this knowledge and experience, and you can see that this has progressed up through the mid 2014, 2015, there starts to be almost a twofold increase in the number of participants and out of school time, program offerings, and investment. All the way to 2017, which takes us to the genesis of the Opportunity Project here in Tulsa. So as a community who was selected by the Wallace Foundation to participate in a national research study about out of school time and in school time working together in the promotion of social emotional learning, the Opportunity Project was formed in partnership with the school district. So we have been partners in this work from the very, very beginning, and I'm so grateful to have that collaboration between the school district and us as a community organization. One thing I will say is a real testament to your team, Dr. Gist, and to the board that without fail across the country, whenever we meet with other organizations and other communities, they absolutely question. The first question is, how do you have such a good relationship with your school district? And how have you gotten your school district to really be on board with expanded learning and out of school time? So I think the commitment that you all have made and the interest that you've shown is really, really important and is leading the way and making an example for the rest of the country. In that work and the Wallace Foundation social emotional learning work, there's a really great quote that I want to read to you from the president of the Wallace Foundation, just sort of talking about why is this important? And he said, we're more interested we're interested in more rather than quantifying student benefits. Equally important is the question, what does it take to align and carry out SEL programs in different settings? What helps? What gets in the way? If something like SEL is helpful, and we know that it is, that's good, but it doesn't take you very far unless you also know how to carry it out in an aligned system. So for me, that's such a great way to think about the work that we're doing today. So we've really leveraged, again, all of this learning both within Tulsa and around the country to be able to move forward. And if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the why. So this is a great graphic that is made by an organization out of New York that really encapsulates the why behind expanded learning, out of school time experiences, why we need to have an investment and an emphasis on this work. So you can see this graphic really tells us if a young person from a community that may be marginalized is their experience is contrasted with a middle class, an average middle class student, what you see is that there's a 6,000 hour experiential learning gap by the time that young person gets to 6th grade. So up until the time they get to middle school, there's already a gap of 6,000 hours of learning. And you can see all the categories that this learning encompasses here. So this is informative for us, but it also is a challenge to us. So if we see that this is a disparity between young people across the country, and more specifically young people in Tulsa, this is a call to action for us to really do everything we can to close that gap. And that's where the Opportunity Project comes in, to be the glue and the connector between various community organizations, programs, faith groups, camp programs, extracurricular activities, to make a more cohesive system that serves more young people. So this is really what we're working towards, is how do we reduce this learning gap, and how do we do it in a way that is both efficient and effective for the young people that we're trying to serve. So for the next slide, I just kind of want to go into the why of what we do. This graphic illustrates the components of what is widely thought to be a highly effective quality out of school time system. So you can see there are a lot of different elements that are featured here, everything from capital campaigns, legislative advocacy, data management, etc. An intermediary organization is a fundamental part of this high quality system. And a lot of the reason for that is that we can take the lift off of other smaller nonprofit organizations and other community groups so that they can do the work that is most important and that they do best, which is serving young people. So they don't need to worry about a data system. They don't need to worry about these other kinds of investments that would be really challenging for smaller organizations to take on. In addition to that, it allows for efficiencies in negotiation, cost savings, professional development, and all of the rich data that we can have that helps inform better quality programming in the future. So this is just kind of a sampling of what it means to have an OST system and where the Opportunity Project fits into that ecosystem. So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about why we know this is important and how the knowledge that we have based on current brain science and positive youth development inform the work that we're doing and inform the priorities that we share with Tulsa Public Schools. So this graphic is from Turnaround for Children and really illustrates what the components of a healthy learning system in order to promote development and to lead to thriving young adults includes. So if we acknowledge, we know that learning is social, emotional, and cognitive. In addition to that, we know that brain science tells us that in order to have any kind of real high quality academic learning, young people have to feel safe and they have to have durable, consistent relationships with adults who care about them. So this is a key element of the work that we do and the work that all of our partners do in promoting these kinds of relationships that lay the foundation for real learning to take place. In addition to that, all of the partners we work with share a philosophy and a commitment to being youth-centered. So I like to describe this as having youth voice and youth choice. So making sure that young people are at the heart of a design of a program, but also that they're consistently having input, that there's iteration based on their experiences and their commentary. So this is something that's really critical for design of out of school time. And we feel like is a really important way that we can help our partners in developing these skills and promoting them in order to have that real high quality system. And I think the final bullet here may be even the most important. Going back to what we discussed about the 6,000 hour learning gap, there's a real question of equity around the disparity in those experiences. And if we know that we want young people to be able to explore their identities, have cultural relevance in their learning, and feel that true sense of belonging that leads to that real deep learning, out of school time is a great place to have that. And so that's a lot of the work that we're doing with partners, is to help them embed that intentionally in their program design. So I think if we can go to the next slide, please. We can give a little bit of an overview of the school sites, the Tulsa Public School sites, where Opportunity Project partners are working in a very deep and meaningful way. So you can see here that there are 11 elementary schools and 4 middle schools, and we're growing that impact all the time. This represents a lot of work from a lot of the colleagues and staff members at Tulsa Public Schools to really make sure that the supports are in place for all of the faculty and staff at these schools to be able to implement programming in a robust way. You can also see that the composition of students and young people that we're working with are reflective of the larger district. And we are, again, being very intentional about making sure that students that face challenges and really need these experiences the most are the ones who are receiving the benefit. So we're very proud of that and continue to be grateful to our colleagues at the district who are helping us make sure that our efforts are focused in the right places and that we are moving things forward in the way that we know it needs to happen. So next slide, talk a little bit in more specificity about sort of the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts of what we do every day. So you can see here just a few statistics and graphics that we pulled out to share, the deeper dive of our work. We do a lot of work around professional development and professional learning. There are multiple reasons for that. Of course, building high quality programming and supporting partners is one of them. The other piece of that is if we offer high quality professional development and professional learning, it means that individual organizations don't have to do it. They don't have to pay for it. They don't have to organize it. They don't have to supply the experts because we are available and here to make that happen in a turnkey way for those partners. So we are very proud that since 2017, we've had over 650 trainings, trained thousands and thousands of youth workers and in classroom educators as well across the city. We are proud to count over 100 nonprofit and community organizations as partners in our work. And I want to point out that that is everyone from large national affiliated organizations like a YMCA and a Boys and Girls Club to very small neighborhood-based organizations who are serving families for, sometimes multiple generations, siblings, and have really deep roots in the community. So it's the full spectrum of folks who work in out of school time. One thing that we feel very, very proud of and could not have done without the support of the entire community is in terms of COVID response. Dr. Gist, to your point about really recognizing that we had to do something to create that safety net for young people during distance learning and allow families to be able to be gainfully employed and have a safe, enriching place for their kids to go during the day. We worked with over a dozen community partners, so not only Tulsa Public Schools, but suburban districts as well, large community organizations, small community organizations, to put together a communal request of the Tulsa County Board of Commissioners to utilize the CARES funding that had been funneled to Tulsa County in service of young people. So collectively, we went before the board and made a request. The request was granted. We collectively as a community received over $1.35 million to go directly to frontline service, to youth serving organizations who were doing that work every day. And I would like to say continue to do that work. So I think that's something that's really important that we want to make sure everybody understands. There are young people that have been at some of these organizations for almost a year now. Glad to be back in the classroom for sure, but still there on Wednesdays, still there after school. So these community partners have been working 5 days a week, sometimes more, since last March to ensure that the young people in our community have a safe place to go. And we could not be prouder of that group of partners. So we are just really, really grateful for the Board of County Commissioners in the district and working with us on that. And I'd love to have Debbie Medley join us, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics around COVID response, what that looked like, how many students we were able to serve, and just to give you a little bit more of a flavor of the specifics of that. So Debbie, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Great, thank you. And good evening, President Woolley, members of the board, and Dr. Gist. Those that know me well know that excited is my favorite word, and I am very excited to be here tonight. I have actually been with the district for almost 19 years, and this is the first time I've had a board presentation, and I cannot tell you how thrilled I am that this is the one that I get to present. because of the work that we have done with alongside the Opportunity Project through our Relate 918 work. It is the work that we have done with Relate 918 really gave us the opportunity to focus on building relationships. And that is absolutely critical and key to making this whole system work. It also helped us build like the system that Caroline just described to us. It's the combination of building the relationships and the system simultaneously in support of high quality out of school time programs really laid the framework for being able to have the to launch the COVID response that we did. And if we can go to the next slide, that would be great. I was teasing you, I didn't want you to read all of this yet. I wanted to give this big grand, it's just really exciting. Because I will tell you that when you look at all of the items listed on this slide, many of the things here were, I would say were in the works, so to speak, but differently. Because of the way that, our out of school time system works, we were able to take resources that we were already engaged with students and able to pivot. And so whether it was our supplies where we were able to, you see the 400 kits, partners, including our before and after care program, we were able to create social emotional learning kits and STEM kits that we were able to deliver directly to families and students. And that was actually in collaboration with our child nutrition team. We scoped out all the areas where they were dropping off food, and we figured that would be the best place to meet up with families to be able to safely, wearing masks, be able to deliver all of those kits. Also, that we already had in play, like the super summer, there was already work started on planning summer, and that was able to pivot to becoming virtual. And so again, it was because we had already built the relationships and we already, we had structures in place. For example, regular meetings, instead of, stopping our regular meetings when we moved to this awesome, crazy virtual world, we repurposed them, and that really provided the opportunity for us to pivot very quickly. And when I say pivot quickly, I mean that like the Monday after spring break, partners started calling, contacting families weekly to connect with them to be able to address their needs. And so that was, we had families that had touch points from their school and also from their community partners. And where a lot of times, students are able to really build those strong relationships with their out of school time partners. And so I think it was really great that they were able to mobilize and stay in contact with those students. Excuse me, the other things were the virtual learning opportunities. I tell you, I would love to see a virtual learning opportunity that was developed in March and one that's developed now. I would love to see the growth of even our adults in being able to provide those opportunities for kids. This has been quite the learning curve, I would say, for all of us. If you can go to the next slide, please. This slide really speaks to the collective work that we did when Caroline was mentioning the CARES Act money application. And so that those funds allowed our community partners to stand up community hub sites. And this was very exciting to see so many partners come together. Not only were partners accustomed to serving students on site in our school buildings, and that was no longer an option. So it wasn't just a matter of, how are we going to safely offer programming, but where were we going to do that? And so it was, it was quite the feat to be able to come up with trying to figure out, where all this was going to take place. And again, because of the relationships that we already had built with all the partners, it really made that, I'm not going to say it was easy, but I would say it was, a lot less difficult than it could have been if we didn't already have those relationships. The other thing I want to speak to is that we have such amazing community partners that even before our work with the Opportunity Project, we're doing amazing work in our schools and around the community. And Caroline already spoke to that collective effort. And so now that we're all able to come together and support each other, it's just amazing the amount of work that's happening now. And we also were able to stand up 6 community hope centers. And you can see there's a quote there from from Governor Stitt stating about what the Hope Centers, they are providing academic support to our young children, mental health resources, and help with food insecurity. And then also the Learning Lab also assisted youth with their distance learning. And our Tulsa Public Schools Before and After Care program, we stood up 3 programs, and we chose the programs that we did because of the ability to transition into different learning modes and not disrupt the school space. So we have dedicated classrooms there where we were able to support full day programs. And we also made the intentional decision that we were going to support our Tulsa Public Schools family, and not just our families of our students, but the families, our employees. We know that we had some of our employees, they didn't have as many options for their children during distance learning days, and therefore that would not allow them to work or provide the supports that they would provide for our students. And so we were very pleased that we were able to provide that opportunity for families. Then also we are continuing to collaborate with schools on to support Care and Connect. And I would say that it's been really a great experience for our staff to be able to support not only kiddos in our full day program, but then to be able to also really be part of their school community and to be able to support in a broader way. And then I think, Caroline, I believe that next you were going to talk about your work with equity.
Yeah, thanks so much, Debbie. This is so exciting to see all these numbers tallied up. It's really a testament to the community partners. So thanks for giving us the overview. If you could go to the next slide, I just, in closing, just want to circle back to one of the first things that we talked about, which was really our community-wide commitment to changing the odds for young people who face the greatest challenges. And we feel like one of the best ways we can do that is to support our partners in their work around equity. So we are working consistently to take proactive steps both in our own staff that we are proud to say represents a diverse group of backgrounds, multilingual, and really works very hard and intentionally to support adult learning throughout the city among youth workers, to help local organizations and the folks who work on the front lines with young people every day to support not only equitable environments for those young people, but also to be culturally responsive and to celebrate kids of all backgrounds. So we are really proud and grateful to be able to continue to do this work and to support partners and partner organizations and work alongside our colleagues in the district. So we really appreciate the time that you all gave us to be able to give you a little bit of an overview and an update on where COVID response programming stands today, and look forward to continuing our work in the future. So Dr. Gist and board, thank you so much. And we really look forward to coming back and reporting on more programming as time goes on.
Caroline, thank you so much for your partnership, your leadership, and everything that you and everyone at the Opportunity Project, and also all of the organizations that are a part of this work citywide. It's truly awesome. And Debbie, I am so grateful for you. And you know that I have not ever forgotten and will never forget our very first conversation and the vision that you have had for serving students in these ways. And it is awesome to see how far we've come. And it's also so exciting for both the work that we do with our community partners and also the work that we provide directly from the district to think about what we know is coming on the horizon. So that is our second presentation for tonight, Madam President. Again, would love to talk with you all about perhaps coming back as a staff report. We can have a more discussion about it, but with that, it concludes our special presentations tonight.
Thank you. That brings us to item D, approved minutes of the February 22nd, 2021 regular meeting of the board and the March 1st, 2021 special meeting of the board. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I'll call for the vote. Pastor Marshall? Aye. Ms. Barbara Perez?
See?
Ms. Schreiber? Aye. Mr. Croissant?
Aye.
Ms. Keller? Aye. Dr. Griffin?
Aye.
And aye. That brings us to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Great. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing no questions or discussion, I'll call for the vote. Dr. Griffin,
Aye.
Ms. Keller,
Aye.
Mr. Croissant,
Aye.
Ms. Schreiber,
Aye.
Ms. Barbara Perez,
Same.
Pastor Marshall,
Aye.
and I. We have 2 items to consider on tonight's action agenda. Item F1 is a recommendation to amend and increase funding for excess charges to Equifax Talks UCM Services, who acts on behalf of the district as a third-party administrator to provide timely responses and administration of unemployment claims during the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The cost is $40,000, and the rationale is that Equifax receives notices of claims that may be charged to the district. As third-party administrator, TPA, Equifax protests claims when appropriate and submits documents to the Oklahoma Employees Security Commission, OESC, regarding employment separation. Equifax represents the district at administrative hearings regarding unemployment benefits. The district is obligated to reimburse OESC all money paid out in benefits. An effective TPA is necessary to ensure the best use of district resources. Equifax expenditures is capped at $10,000, and anything in excess will be charged to the district at a rate of $12 per inquiry. I will now entertain a motion to approve item F1.
Madam President, was I out of the immediate room when we did the consent agenda?
No, we just voted on it.
Oh, I must have been out of the room then. Thank you.
Move approval of item F1.
Is there any discussion regarding item F1? Dr. Griffin?
Aye.
Okay, seeing no discussion, I will call for the vote. Pastor Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Barbara Perez?
Same.
Ms. Schreiber? Aye. Mr. Croissant?
Aye.
Ms. Keller?
Aye.
Dr. Griffin?
Aye.
And I. Item F2, approve an agreement with Midwest Dairy to use their equipment to expand our Second Chance Breakfast program in our secondary schools starting on March 22nd, 2021. The rationale is that Midwest Dairy works in collaboration with dairy farmers in Oklahoma and across the Midwest to increase milk consumption. They are a valued community partner of the Child Nutrition Department, providing resources, equipment, and guidance to help make meal service successful. Child Nutrition is working to expand our Second Chance Breakfast program in all secondary sites. Midwest Dairy has generously offered to provide the equipment at no cost to the district to expand our breakfast and reach additional students after the first bell. Second Chance Breakfast encourages students to pick up a grab-and-go breakfast meal between the first and second class period by strategically placing the breakfast carts provided by Midwest Dairy throughout the school building. Many secondary students miss the opportunity to partake in breakfast before the first bell due to late arrival, participation in extracurricular activities such as band or athletics, or possible challenges associated with accessing breakfast in the cafeteria. This expansion of service can help to reduce food insecurity and lead to better health outcomes of our students with good nutrition. By placing these breakfast carts throughout the building after students have arrived for the start of the school day, Child Nutrition will be able to offer and serve additional students a nutritious breakfast. Potentially, these breakfast carts can be reutilized in the afternoon to offer supper meals for students as they depart for the day. I will now entertain a motion to approve item F2.
So moved.
Before our discussion on this item, I will call our speaker, Mr. John Huffines, who signed up to speak to item utilized in the afternoon. F1.
Hello?
Just one second. I'm sorry, Mr. Huffines. You have signed up to speak to items F1, G1, and G2 via Zoom. If you would address all of your items at this time, you have 5 minutes and you'll be given a 30-second warning. Are you there, Mr. Huffines? Is Mr. Huffines still in the room?
Hey, Mr. Huffines. Yes, I am here. Shall I begin?
Yes, please. And he will give you a 30-second warning when you come to the end of your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Peace. Yes, peace. Greetings to our Honorable Superintendent, Dr. Guest, our Honorable Madam President, Stacy Woolley, and our Honorable Vice President, Suzanne Schreiber. Thank you to each of our Honorable Tulsa Public School Board members, honorable staff, team, and IT departments. We are grateful for all the teachers and citizens of this great city, Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is a joy to be with you on this 8th day of March in the year of our loving Lord, Jesus Christ, 2021. Yes, we are spirit beings. We have a mind and live in a body. With this in our thinking, item F2, talking about child nutrition, may our main focus be to nourish the true child with God's words of love, joy, peace, strength, and hope. Yes, item F2, Midwest Dairy works in collaboration with dairy farmers in Oklahoma and across the Midwest to increase milk consumption. They are a valued community partner of the Child Nutrition Department, providing resources, equipment, and guidance to help make meal service successful. Yes, I'll say, and another valued community partner is Victory Church here in Tulsa. They have been a part of multiplied millions of meals being given in the last year. Child Nutrition is working to expand our Second Chance breakfast program in all secondary sites. Midwest Dairy has generously offered to provide the equipment at no cost to the district to expand our breakfast and each additional students after the first bell. Jesus Christ and the Bible encourage us to be generous. Seems we have here with Midwest Dairy Works a present-day example of generosity. And thank you, TPS leaders, for generously and freely loving our children and doing your best for them. Second Chance Breakfast encourages students to pick up a grab-and-go breakfast meal between the first and second class period by strategically placing the breakfast carts provided by Midwest Dairy throughout the school building. As we make it possible for our young ones to grab this food and go, may they also be encouraged to pause for a moment, perhaps 3 to 5 seconds, and thank the good Lord for providing this food, and to give thanks for everyone who played a role in getting this meal to them. Teaching them to express gratitude is beneficial. Almighty God, we invoke your guidance. Now, item G1 mentions the phrase represents the values of the community. These values of the community surely include honoring and respecting each person and all who are in authority. Honor and respect are important attributes, and the good book, the book of books, the Bible, encourages us along these lines. Item G1 also speaks of students and families identifying with a person. May our main focus be on identifying with Christ, his truth, and his words as found in the Holy Scriptures. Item G2, recommendation. Install signage at Hale High School recognizing the Hardesty Family Foundation and the Tulsa Home Builders Association for their generous support in funding a construction, career, and technology education program. Yes, may we, like God's word, the Holy Bible states, give honor to whom honor is due. May we also install signage honoring God and his Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. Rationale, community and business partnerships are an essential building block in achieving and Tulsa Public Schools' mission to prepare every student for the greatest success in college, careers, and life. Yes, thank you, TPS leadership, for always doing your best to prepare our young people for future opportunities in both higher education and the labor market. May we move even further forward and prepare our young people for this life, yes, and the afterlife as well. This is done by putting the Lord of love, Christ Jesus, and his teachings first place in our educational system. Thank you, family.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Is there any discussion regarding item F2? Mr. Croissant?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because I've worked in the breakfast program at Edison for 12 years, that we did have a lot of students that daily would come in late. And although the cafeteria was still open, because a lot of these late buses, kids are worried about getting to class, and they're not being counted tardy, but there's this, rush to go where they need to go. I think having food opportunities throughout the building. I think that does, especially for our secondary students, it allows them to take something without necessarily going out of their way, because they just don't do that sometimes, even when you put the sandwich out, for them to take with them. So I think having more opportunities for food, and these are our growing students, our middle school and high school students, that they need that sustenance to be able to do well in class. It makes a huge difference knowing that these kids have food. And I think this is a great opportunity where someone, again, is wanting to partner with us to try to help students. So I think it's a really, really good thing to be able to bring to the district.
Thank you, Mr. Croissant. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing no further, I'll call for the vote. Dr. Griffin?
Aye.
Ms. Keller?
Aye.
Mr. Croissant?
Aye.
Ms. Schreiber?
Aye.
Ms. Barbara Perez?
See?
Pastor Marshall?
Aye.
And I. That brings us to the information agenda, and I will turn this portion of the meeting over to Superintendent Gist to present. Dr. Gist.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and all Tulsans who are joining us in whatever format you may be joining us. As a reminder, information items come to the board for discussion. They're not acted upon when they're here for information, but rather will be acted upon only if they come back to the board on either the consent agenda or the action agenda. So I believe, Madam President, you're going to be introducing our first information item tonight, but I do want to acknowledge Principal Irma Sandoval, who is the awesome school leader of the wonderful team at Dual Language Academy. And she has brought, representing the committee, she has brought the renaming recommendation to us today. So with that, Madam President, I'll turn it back to you.
Yes, thank you. Item G1 is a recommendation to rename the current Dual Language Academy site as Felicitas Mendez International School. The rationale is that in accordance with Board Policy 1802, an ad hoc committee was formed to create a recommendation for a new name for Dual Language Academy. After gathering name suggestions from teachers, support professionals, students, parents, and community members, the Dual Language Academy Naming Ad Hoc Committee met to review the community feedback and identified 4 potential names to recommend for the school. The ad hoc committee then completed a second round of feedback gathering to determine how Dual Language Academy community members responded to each potential name. Based on the insights from this second round of feedback, the ad hoc committee unanimously selected Felicitas Mendez International School as the recommended name of the school. Felicitas Mendez was a leader in advocating for every child to have access to quality educational experiences. As one of the lead plaintiffs in the landmark 1947 Mendez versus Westminster case that desegregated California public schools, Mendez helped to lead the way to a more equitable education for all students. The ad hoc committee believes that as a bilingual civil rights advocate and champion for children, Felicitas Mendez represents the values of the community that Dual Language Academy services, and that she is a leader with whom students and families at the school can identify. I will ask if there are any questions or comments from the board. Pastor Marshall?
I would say I took part in this process with Dual Language. Principal Sandoval and the entire team, they worked well together. They came into it with an open mind. I think they pretty much knew what they wanted. And it was a joyful experience for myself as a board member to work with Principal Sandoval and the entire committee. And I want to commend them on their timeliness and in selecting a name for the school.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Sandoval, for being with us. We've met some time ago. I spent some time with your community at Dual Language Academy, planting some trees. I hope they're all still doing well. But I'm excited for this name change, and I know you are too, considering dual language academy is not nearly as exciting as being able to pick something that's a little more specific to your community. So it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Board President Woolley. Thank you, Pastor Marshall, for your leadership on this, and Principal Sandoval, thank you again. We're pleased to have the committee bring this to the board. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's fine.
Board Member Keller.
I don't have tons to add. I felt like as the history teacher, I should chime in a little. When Dr. Gist told me about the name last night that was going to be on the agenda today, I was very excited because today is International Women's Day. And as a history teacher, I have taught about this case, about Mendez v. Westminster, 100 times. And never once does it ever mention the first name of the family. And so I'm really excited that we are learning and going to learn more about the woman behind this new name. And I'm very excited. And I think it's an exceptional choice for the building formerly known as the Dual Language Academy.
I will add to that in saying that I didn't know anything about this name, and I think that's one of the most exciting things. I hope people will stay curious about what our schools are named after, and I think it's just great that this community wanted something that was organic and personal to them, and just gives them a lot of ownership over their school, but also for all of Tulsa that we get to learn more and more about it. And for someone who didn't know a ton about this, it's so excited to know about it and have something, one of our schools named after this fantastic woman. So it's a great day, and it's just exciting. So congratulations to all of you and all your hard work on this, because I know that it was probably an exciting process, and I'm glad to see it work. It's worked well.
Dr. Giss.
Yeah.
One more thing I would like to interject. I'm happy to see this change. We live in a state where we proudly talk about the fact that we incarcerate more females than any state in the nation. And I think that this name change and naming the school after a female leader and champion for rights, it does something for our little girls that they can have someone to look up to. And this was one of the things that we discussed when we went about selecting the names.
Thank you so much to all of you, and again, Pastor Marshall and Principal Sandoval and everyone on the committee for bringing this name forward. Based on board policy, this will come back to the board again, and then it will come again for action. So there's plenty of opportunity for people to weigh in and share with board members your feedback about the name, and we look forward to continue working on this. We also have a couple of other committees that are continuing to work. Okay, so moving on, we have item G2, and I want to acknowledge that we have our principal from Hale High School, Dr. Sheila Riley, who's joined us. She's on the Zoom, and we have announced this project, and this is a pretty straightforward item, and it's about a sign. But that sign represents so much more. This is a sign at Hale High School that will recognize the Hardesty Family Foundation and the Tulsa Home Builders Association, who Dr. Riley and the team at Hale have worked collaboratively with to get the Construction Academy up and running there at Hale High School. So we certainly have, we have Dr. Riley, we also have Dr. Johnson as Chief Learning Officer in case board members have any questions about the sign. Mm-hmm. Excellent. So Dominic is still here, and we're happy to have Dominic with us as well.
Absolutely, and I can jump right in. Thank you, Dr. Giss, Board President Woolley, and members of the board. It's with excitement that we have this presentation today. We heard a lot about partnerships, and earlier during the presentations, and we can just definitely continue to add the Hardesty Family Foundation and the Tulsa Home Builders Association to that list of amazing partners who support Tulsa Public Schools in so many ways. The community and business partnerships, as we know, are essential in building blocks, in achieving Tulsa Public Schools' mission to prepare every student for the greatest success in college, career, and life. And so I don't want to go too deep into this amazing partnership and opportunity and take away from what I know Mr. Dressel wants to share, as well as Dr. Riley. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Dressel, and then he'll welcome Dr. Riley to speak. Mr. Dressel.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Gist, Madam President, members of the board. I was going to say the same thing. You heard a great staff presentation on an exciting collaboration before, and this is not a staff presentation, but it will turn into a staff presentation maybe a year from now. Just want to say before handing it over to Dr. Riley that this is one of those collaborations that really embody a lot of things that make Tulsa such a great place. You know, you have the school leader that has been wanting that kind of program for years and really not taken no for an answer and advocated for it and proactively sought out partners who can help make it happen. And then you have, of course, the incredibly generous philanthropic community and business community that want to support us in providing these kinds of programs. And I think at Tulsa Public Schools, we think about college and career readiness in the sense that we want to provide students with options and with choices to experience different kinds of ways that their post-secondary, post-high school life could turn out. And this is the kind of program that can lead to a whole range of different things. It could lead to a job right out of high school. It could lead to certification at Tulsa Tech, and it could lead to an engineering degree at a four-year university. So very excited about this collaboration, and I'd love to hand it over to Dr. Riley.
Thank you so much. Dr. Gist, Madam President, Dr. Griffin, members of the board, thank you so much for having me on. I'm giddy. I feel like I've worked on this project for 1,000 years. We are so excited to have this. I just want to share briefly, when I returned home from Tennessee in 2012, I was the principal at Eugene Field Elementary. Dr. Johnson, I know you and your children so well, beautiful babies. But one of the things that struck me about Eugene Field was that it was unique in the way that the community surrounded that school and provided opportunities for those students that they wouldn't normally have. When I moved to the high school, it becomes less of a community effort, and schools often are alone at the high school level without major partnerships to help. And mostly because of the sheer size. But one of the things that I did want to do when I got there was to start building relationships with our community so that our students had a way to experience more of what Tulsa has to offer and want to stay here and give back to their communities. This construction program is going to do exactly that. And I'm so thankful to Jeffrey Smith at the Home Builders Association. I'm extremely grateful for the Hardesty Foundation and what they are contributing to make this happen. And this is just the start. This is one way that our students will be able to rise above where they are currently. We will, provide them the opportunity to learn a trade and skills that will have them ready for college and career when they leave our school. And I just couldn't be more excited about how it turned out. So thank you for everyone that's involved, and we're excited to get started. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are really, really grateful for the Home Builders Association and the Hardesty Foundation, and thrilled to be able to represent them on the signage showing the Construction Academy. And Dr. Riley, you know how much I appreciate your relentlessness and your just really your tenacity And I'm sure we'll have a chance, earlier, I don't know if you saw the first part of the meeting, Dr. Riley, but we committed to the board to bringing back career and technical education as a whole. And this is one of the kinds of programs that we'd love to include in that overall discussion when we bring it back as a staff report, so we can really truly engage. So with that, that is item G2. Any other questions about that? All right, moving on to items G3 through G5. I'll start with So with G3, as the board knows, and the public may, those who are really study board agendas, that contracts come in threes. And so G3, G4, and G5 are all about the contracts related to the interior renovations at Academy Central, which is the site of Greenwood Leadership Academy. And we have Mr. Chris Hudgens available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Guest. Items G3, 4, and 5, as you mentioned, are the G3 is to enter into trade contracts with the subcontractors. This project is currently out to bid right now and will be brought back to the next board meeting with contractors' names and numbers. The purpose of this renovation is part of the 2015 bond issue. There were 14 other schools that were aligned as one of the renovations that was included in the 2015 bond. And the improvements will be ADA accessibility, restrooms, as well as interior improvements in the classrooms with interior doors and hardware. So those are just some of the improvements that would be made. This construction manager is Trigon General Contractors. They've done several projects for us, and all this work will be done this summer and will be completed on August 1st before school starts. So are there any questions on any of these modifications that will be made?
Before we continue, we have a speaker who signed up to speak to item G3, Ms. Melissa Remington.
I have a couple of questions. We talk about this bond money as that it's going to a partnership for GLA that was not listed on our 2015 bond. Instead, it was Academy Central that was listed on the bond for taxpayers to vote on to enrich that building. We saw that this building was closed with the transitional close on there. So what my question is to this board is to see this come up again for more money for a partnership school. This truly leaves parents confused. Is it a charter? Is it actually a TPS school that we are calling a partnership? We need clarification of really what these relationships are with GLA for taxpayers to understand what this partnership really is. It sounds like to me as a taxpayer that they are getting a lot of benefits, but no real rules that we see for TPS schools. Is this the second time we are paying out more money for 2015 bond money instead of sites that are actually critical? Did this go before the board to actually make these decisions to go? I'm sorry, not the board, I apologize, actually the bond committee to make sure that we're actually using our bond money frugally. I have a lot of questions about this and I don't seem to get a lot of answers whenever I ask this board. So I ask you publicly to explain what is actually truly GLA and why are we using our 2015 bond money that was set aside for Academy Central, a public school?
Thank you. Do you have a question, Madam President? Oh, Dr. Griffin.
Who owns the building?
Tulsa Public Schools. And the building is Academy Central.
And we lease it to Greenwood Academy?
Greenwood Leadership Academy is an entity that's providing the educational services in the building. It is a neighborhood school.
Under contract?
Pardon?
Under a contract?
Correct. And a partnership school, right?
Memo of understanding?
Pardon?
Is it a contract or a memorandum of understanding?
It's a
MOU.
contract.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudge. Oh, Mr. Croissant.
Yeah, and I know it talks about ADA compliance. So are the restrooms and some of the facilities right now non-ADA compliance, meaning we would need to upgrade them no matter who was in the building?
Go ahead, Mr. Hudgens.
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hudgens. Moving on to items G6 and G7. These are items related to our calendar for next year, and we're really thrilled to bring this to you. It's a little later than we usually do, but there were some additional complications, as everybody is aware, this year, but there's been a great amount of engagement on this calendar, and relatedly, the board will be asked to approve the length of the school year as it's calculated in hours. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Robles.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Madam President, members of the board. As Dr. mentioned, the effort here of this proposed calendar for the 2021 to 2022 school year in item G6, it reflects the input of over 200 families, a calendar committee as we usually establish for this process, and also consultation with different stakeholders. Some of the key highlights for this calendar that is presented to you: it maximizes uninterrupted learning time. As we've done in previous years, we try to minimize short weeks. It includes time for job-embedded and dedicated professional development. It preserves the traditional holidays that we're accustomed to in the full week, and also allows us for significant summer learning. And it meets all the state requirements for instructional time. In the committee, we had a representation from parents, support employees, teachers, principals, different central office teams such as payroll, talent management, teaching and learning, etc. Also representatives from the Tulsa Classroom Teacher Association and the American Federation of Teachers 6049 were part of this 2021-2022 calendar committee discussions. And the TCTA bargaining team has entered into negotiations with the district bargaining team and are nearing completion of negotiations that will expand service to students in transitional grades through this calendar. So we're very grateful for their continued partnership of TCTA and AFT 6049 and their advocacy through this process. So I'll answer any questions that you might have on G6. And well, let me do G7 really quick, which is essentially based on House Bill 1864. The recommendation is to approve for the length of the calendar to be calculated in hours as opposed to days. And the recommendation is to do so as we've done in previous years. This allows for more flexibility in the calendar and to make any type of modifications, through events such as inclement weather that without impacting the average daily membership or the average daily attendance calculations. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Robles. Board Member Keller.
Chief Robles, thank you so much. Could you tell us a little bit more about the input of over 200 families and how that differs from previous years?
Yes, Board Member Keller. So we did questionnaires via phone with over 200 families where we asked their input around different aspects of the calendar, such as the value of the length of the calendar, things like the length of the weeks for the short weeks, participation in extended learning opportunities. We had a great representation of families, so demographically and from a race ethnicity perspective, we had a good representation of our Black families, Latinx families, 5 families across the district. And it just allowed us to incorporate for the first time this year that input into what the committee essentially ultimately recommended as a design.
Board Vice President Schreiber.
So I had 2 questions, or I guess a question and a comment. I'll ask my question first. You mentioned that this allows for more supports in the transitional grades. Can you say more about that?
The work that we're doing, through the negotiations with TCTA and AFT is essentially to try to allow for some days at the start of the school year to bring in our transitional grades earlier. We've seen a lot of success. It's been very positive feedback from students, families, and our school leaders and teachers, and that's what we're trying to create here.
Great. I actually do have one question before my comment. In terms of snow days, and I know this probably doesn't have an answer yet, but I know it's on everyone's mind. And what we think of a snow day can be a lot of things, different types of weather that prevents us from going back to school. But I know the question is whether we'll transition to distance learning on, those days rather than have actual snow days. And I wondered if that is being considered in negotiations or how that conversation is happening.
It is certainly something that we know we have the ability to do. I think that I have made a commitment publicly that if there's real snow, like snowman building, snow angel, creating snows, we call them inclement weather days, as you know, and as you were alluding to, Vice President Schreiber. And I think that what I would say is that it sort of depends. It's not a part of negotiations, but rather it's something that we need to get into a practice now as a district. I think that there are some days in which, like in the past, you'll recall that we've had to not have school because of the cold. And I think that's a great example of where distance learning could be super valuable. Sometimes when there's ice, there are issues with internet. So we have a lot of factors that we'll have to go into it. And as you likely know, we have a very extensive process for determining whether or not something will be an inclement weather day or a snow day, as is oftentimes known. And I think that our very extensive flow chart is going to need to be updated to factor in whether or not what we're recommending is a day where we don't have school and we add it on to the end of the year, or whether we shift to distance learning.
Thank you. The last thing I was going to mention was just that I'm happy to see that we're still thinking about the kind of the student outcomes in those longer weeks. We transitioned to that, and not just because it may seem more convenient for families, but because really what we know is when we have those shorter weeks, our attendance goes down. We have difficulty getting everyone there. So when we just block the time together, it works better for families and kids in terms of attendance at school, not just that week that they're out. So I always thought that was a really interesting outcome in the way that worked. And I'm glad to see that we're continuing with that, because I think it's, what we're driving for is better attendance. And so, and then it has the added benefit of just, hey, this whole week is not school. So I'm glad to see that's still there.
Thank you, Vice President Schreiber. Dr. Griffin.
Great minds and all that. I was thinking about the snow days too, Vice President Schreiber. I think that instead of just being only an administrative edict, that there ought to be a board policy of when we use virtual days in those events, giving you some parameters to choose. And I'm just thinking out loud at this point, maybe it's 1 to 2 days we do this, 3 to 4, something. But I think that should be a board policy instead of just that gives you parameters. We're not going to, I think, do it in detail, but gives you some guidance on that. Secondly, I would also piggyback off Board Member Keller. How are these 200 families selected?
They were randomly selected.
Randomly?
Yeah.
Okay. From what list?
From a list of enrolled students.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Keller.
Thank you. On G7, as we transition over to an hourly count, could you remind us what the state minimum is for hours? Is it 1085?
I think it's 1,043, I believe. I can provide you the exact number. Just don't have a hand here.
Thank you.
I'm sure we can get that real quickly, Board Member Keller. Board Member Croissant.
Yeah, and I know it's a little hard to read, not in color, so that makes it a little more difficult, but I was seeing in October and February an opportunity for extended learning opportunities. How do they work? Do they work like what we've done this year with, I forget the terminology that we use, not Care and Connect.
You mean that like intercessions?
Intercessions, yes. Is it going to work like that? Can maybe a little feedback on what the extended learning opportunities might contain?
Yep. Okay. A couple things. One is the hours are 1,080. You were very close. So a couple things about that, Board Member Croissant. I think, so one thing is that to Vice President Schreiber's comment a moment ago, that some of these weeks are weeks out of school there. And I think it's important for the public to know that that doesn't take away from the total amount that students go to school. That means that the days are spread differently throughout the course of the year. So as you see on the calendar, there are though some of those weeks that are not full holidays, and you can see in the color coding that there are moments where we will be able to provide academic supports and enrichment opportunities for students. And so that was what Mr. Robles was referring to. And we can do that in multiple ways, but right now we're negotiating with TCTA for that to be actually a part of our year, so it can be planned for well ahead of time, as opposed to something that we do as like a stipend or something along those lines. Your comment, though, Board Member Croissant, makes me think about a conversation that you and I had over the weekend, and I had with some of the other board members, which is that the calendar can be confusing to read. There are a lot of different kinds of days and a lot of colors and a lot of boxes and a lot of lines and so forth. And so one of the things that we're committed to doing is following the board's approval of the calendar. Will create one that is for families, that takes off the days that they don't need to know about, that have to do with staff or professional development or whatever. And it just really says, here's the first day of school, here are the start of the quarter, the end of the quarter, here are the days that students are not in school and so forth. So it should be much more easy for people to read. Okay.
I have a quick follow-up.
Yes.
So the hours required is 1080. Do you know how many hours are on this calendar?
1,148.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we look forward to bringing this back to the board for your action. And that, Madam President, concludes our information items.
Which moves us to staff report. Do you have a staff report for us this evening, Dr. Gist?
We do, Madam President. We are going to hear from two of our team members and discuss two categories of work within this particular agenda item. We will hear from Mr. Robles to provide our regular update around COVID and the data, and there's some very exciting news on that, very encouraging, I should say. And we also have some updates related to the work that we're doing to support our students, and we'll do some follow-up on the announcements that we shared publicly for the first time last week. So I'll start by turning it over to Mr. Robles to begin.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Madam President, members of the board. So as we usually do during these meetings, I'll provide you the latest update on our health data. So if we can please go to slide 4. So as Dr. Gist referenced, and we'll see in the charts, rates have continued to decrease, which is fantastic news. And now we're at levels that we have not seen actually since July. And as we've said before, this is a time to continue to focus on our safety protocols and for all of us to do our part so that we can continue in that trend and keep our students in person. In the early warning indicators, our case counts have remained low after 2 full weeks of being back in person, and we'll see the numbers, which is also a positive trend. We have continued to provide opportunities and communicated with our team members around vaccinations, and they have been available across all week. So we're sending regular emails, creating opportunities for team members to sign up or actually attend efforts that are first come, first serve. We've also are working on continue to reschedule any team members who have not been able to access their second dose, from the group that we were supporting at our clinics. As we discussed last week, we're starting our rapid testing screening this week. We've focused on training our designated staff at each site and the process for families and staff to opt into that opportunity to get a rapid test. We have continued to monitor our staffing levels daily across school teams and professional supports. We have not seen meaningful change from last week's update. And we've also continued to deliver additional PPE per the process that we've set in place and we discussed previously when the schools, teachers can directly request, and we've been delivering that to our schools as well as supporting them on any questions or guidance needed for implementing safety protocols. Go to the next slide. This is the chart that you're used to seeing by now from global epidemics. On the left, as of March 6, Oklahoma was at 17.2. This is a 7-day rolling average of new cases per 100,000 people, and Tulsa County is at 14.2, which actually places it below the state, and as we'll see later, below the country rate at this point. Next slide, please. This is the same trend shown in what the Tulsa Health Department publicizes in their website, and we can see that consistent trend that as I referenced before, we're now at that July timeframe levels of 7-day rolling average for new cases. Next slide, please. We're seeing that translate into a downward trend that continues on our hospitalization rates, which also helps our system support our community members during this time. If you go to the next slide, please. This is the chart that we show you as of March 6th when compared to the country. Tulsa County is below both the country and the state, which is really positive news. And when we do that projection for our boundaries and school-age students within our boundary, we're really reaching levels that are positive for and conducive to strengthening our efforts to keep our students in person and safe during this time around. If we go to the next slide. Really thrilled to see mostly yellow in this map from the zip code chart that the Tulsa Health Department publicized. That we have our first screen we haven't seen in a long time. And we hope that this trend continues as this data gets updated and the 7-day rolling average continues to decrease. Go to the next slide. As I referenced, our case count for employees and students has remained at a low level. These are the number of cases reported for last week, with all of our students back in person, and we continue to monitor this daily to ensure that things continue to stay under control and everyone's safe during in-person learning. If you go to the next slide, please. This is the comparison with our neighboring districts. As you see, most districts have remained at that low rate, which is a reflection of what's going on in the surrounding areas. There's just a small uptick in Owasso, but it's still at very low levels, which is positive news for all districts in the area. In the next slide, please, as I mentioned, really no changes in terms of updates for both support professionals, school site level staffing. We continue to monitor daily and provide the supports and essentially manage through absences and leaves. In terms of substitutes, the needs continue and remain consistent. As we referenced last time, we've continued to see the number of applicants to slowly increase, but we're not seeing that translate really in an increase of active subs filling the requests that schools are making. So work continues in that front, and know that our talent management team is doing tremendous efforts to work in that space. And as I referenced before, we continue to work to have the necessary stock of PPE supplies for our schools and continue to deliver based on the process that we've set out. That's what I have for today, so I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
I don't have a question, but I would like to say real quickly that I'm super excited to hear we're getting more subs ready to go out into our schools and help fill the gap. So I just want to say thank you, Tulsans, who have helped to do that.
And we need
Dr.
more.
Griffin?
I'd be super excited when we can all take our masks so I can understand what people are saying.
Yes.
That was a pretty good presentation, clocked in at 6 minutes and 43 seconds. The first one was presentation tonight was 18 minutes and 20. The second one was 30 minutes. I would suggest in the interest and efficiency of this board, Mr. Robles, and this is just a suggestion, since we're back in person, that you just give us the report and talk about the extraordinary items. I don't see the need for me anyway to go through all the maps every time. I think we can read those. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. I'll certainly take that to board leadership, and we'll take the direction accordingly, depending on what the board is interested in seeing. Appreciate the feedback. Board Member Keller.
Thank you. Chief Robles, have we seen any increase in the number of students who've signed up to do random testing, or the number of staff for that matter, I suppose?
We have seen an increase on families opting in. I think last time we talked, we were about at 400. We're now somewhere in the mid 500s. And staff, I believe that we are leveling off at about 2,000.
Thank you. And I believe we received an email from OSSBA today saying that starting tomorrow, students are eligible for vaccines. So just to make parents aware of that going forward.
Yes, so we know that that is something that, so students who are citizens of a Native American tribe and others have had access, and now that's going to start growing. So that's something that that we're going to be tracking very closely, both in terms of, our older students and encouraging that. And then also as we track through the summer and start to see what happens with the trials that are happening for younger students. We have been encouraging families to opt their students into rapid testing, as that's a way that will help us to keep our schools safer. And we're grateful to those families who've decided that that's not only good for the school district, but it's helpful to their family as well. Vice President Schreiber.
I was going to say, as a parent of a teen or two teens, but one who would be eligible for the vaccine, I mean, these were the kids that were the time bombs, right? Wanting to be places, it was hard to get in front of them, stop them, and they are now going to be eligible for the vaccine. It just should make a huge impact, because we know that they could be carriers, but really frequently not get sick, but then get other people sick. So really want to urge parents to investigate the opportunities for their kids 16 and older to get vaccinated and take advantage of that. That would be, I mean, we can already see the impact of, the vaccines in Oklahoma, and it's going to probably amplify with, this age population who's so mobile and continuing with their lives. Because, I mean, pretty much, as I like to say at my house, when you're a teenager, you're not much, but you're all you think about. That's kind of how it goes. So they definitely need to, they're good kids, good to push the kids who are old enough.
Absolutely. Very much agree with the importance of those vaccines, Madam Vice President. Board Member Croissant.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of talk about these numbers are, I think, as good as what we could have hoped for when we made the decisions, and the fact that we've only had some very, very small numbers of kids having to go into quarantine or getting sick. I think that's really, really good to protect our students and our staff. Also, though, spring break is next week, and I encourage people to be safe and vigilant and wear your mask and social distance and wash your hands, no matter where your break takes you, whether it be here in Tulsa or somewhere else. Just to be safe, so that when we come back after spring break, these numbers continue to improve.
Absolutely. I mean, we think back to a year ago, it was about this moment that it was actually, it will be, I think Thursday is the year directly the day that our students and team members, our teachers left for spring break, not realizing that we wouldn't be back, let alone what was to come. So it is certainly fascinating to look back on that. I think that the science and everything that has happened with testing, with the vaccines and all of that moving so quickly is, it's really remarkable. And as long as it feels, it could have been a lot longer. And I feel incredibly grateful to those researchers, those scientists, those medical professionals who've gotten us to where we are now. Excellent. Okay, thank you, Mr. Robles. So we have Dr. Johnson. We're second part of our report is that we wanted to share and just review what we provided to the public last week and see if the board has anything that you'd like to discuss with us regarding the supports. And this is not all of the supports, because obviously all of our schools are working with their students, but this is a high level of what's happening in the district. So Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Board President Woolley, and members of the board. Super excited about the press conference that took place on March the 4th at Eugene Field Elementary School. We were right there in the Global Garden where my own children planted food there, and then that food would grow and I would have to then go figure out how to cook that food. And so I had a great opportunity there to talk about so many of the wonderful opportunities that we're planning for our students in order to provide them with the academic, social, and emotional supports that they need during this time. So I'll just start off by, next slide please, talking a little bit about Operation Graduation, which is going to give our students our one-on-one support to help every high school senior fulfill graduation requirements. As you all know, we are in the spring and it is time for us to gear up towards our graduation ceremonies, and our goal is to have every single student to be able to participate, walk across the stage, get their diploma. We're also, gearing up for supporting our students with tutoring our seniors to get more intensive support so that they can actually finish, get the help that they need through what we call senior boot camps, which we have those every year in order to provide additional supports for our students. And this year we're adding an additional component for our students who are in need of more flexible learning options and times with our Twilight Academy, which will, for right now, it will center on our seniors so that we can again get those seniors finished. In future, it'll focus heavily on our juniors and seniors to ensure that they are accruing credit, recouping credit, completing their credits so that they can graduate on time. Also want to share, next slide, also want to share about the Care and Connect program. So we've spoken a few times at board meeting regarding the Care and Connect that's happening at our sites, and just want to give a shout out to our school leaders, our school counselors, not only for what I stated previously around Operation Graduation, but the Care and Connect has given our students such a nice in-person opportunity to address their academic, social, and emotional needs. Those happen on Wednesdays. We're continuing that support this spring, and it focuses on our students with the greatest needs. And so we've had families to reach out to tell us thank you for those supports. We've had teachers to say that it just feels great to work with our students in a more intentional way in order to provide them with the interventions and the supports that they need. All right, so ready, set, let's go for the summer. So next slide, super excited about what summer is going to bring us. So between June and August, much to what Caroline Shaw mentioned and Debbie Metley mentioned, we will be having community partners to support enrichment activities. Caroline Shaw did an amazing job of giving us a lot of data and really setting up the purpose behind why we need to connect with our community partners and provide what she called out of school time. And in this case, we're talking specifically about enrichment activities for our young people to engage in through our community partnerships. From July the 6th through July the 30th, we will have summer day camp opportunities for all of our elementary and secondary students. So that's all of our young people will have the opportunity to engage in a summer day camp opportunity at every site, free of charge. And then between June and August, we will continue to provide those summer cafe meals to our students who are participating in those activities and to all of our students. And for our children 18 and under, free of charge. I do want to remind everyone that specifically our families that we have opened up pre-registration, so you can learn more and even be prepared to sign up at www.tulsaschools.org/summer. So /summer. So just wanted to make sure that I call that out. That's critically important for our families to know because we want all of our students engaged in summer learning. We know how critically important it is. Next slide. All right, so looking ahead, I'm so excited, I want to recap. All right, so expanded access to out of school time activities for all students. This is going to happen in the fall. So super excited again about all of our students in the fall having access to out of school time activities for all of our students. So that's going to be really powerful for our families and our schools. Before and after care, free of charge at all elementary sites. And then we're also adding tutoring for every student free of charge. And I'll just tell you this, as a parent who relies heavily on the expertise of both teachers, me and my husband, also tutoring. So it's great to get some additional supports and super excited that all of our students will have an equitable opportunity to receive high quality, high dosage tutoring. And then lastly, just want to remind, Operation Graduation is what we're working on right now. Students will have the opportunity to engage heavily with their counselors who are doing an amazing job of getting students finished. We will have the opportunity for students to sign up for Twilight Academy. We're specifically looking at our seniors for that so that they can get done. Ready, Set, Summer. I talked a lot about that with our enrichment opportunities with community partners, day camp offerings at all sites, and meals free of charge for all of our students under 18. Yay to our nutrition department who makes sure that our students are taken care of in that regard. And then in 2021, 2022, out of school time activities will be expanded, before and after care free of charge at all elementary sites, and then tutoring opportunities for all students. So super excited to share those upcoming activities and events. And I'll turn it over back to you, Dr. Gist.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Vice President Schreiber.
So this is so completely awesome. I'm so excited. And I hope everyone's hearing, like, tutoring for all students. And I want to help people understand, because they might think, okay, well, I have before care at my school now, or something like that, and they're accustomed to that, so they think, okay, well, how is that different? And so I just wanted to get a rundown of pre-pandemic, so say 2019, 2020, what did before care look like, and after care look like? If I recall, it was just at some schools, and some people still had a charge depending on income levels or different things like that. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. It's very limited. This is a massive expansion. To give it some massive, we'll use that as a technical term. This is a really, really significant expansion of before and after care. And when I referenced earlier during Debbie Medley's presentation, where she went over sort of where we are now and some of this vision. When I referenced my first conversation with her, she told me previously, years ago, that, you know, that her vision was for us to be able to have before and after care at every site. The challenge is that it is how to structure it, how to recruit the staff, having people on board, and being able to get the mechanisms up in place to have sort of a sliding scale. So what we're able to do because of federal recovery money is launch this district-wide. That will then give us the chance to get a sense of who is interested, which then gives us time to figure out the different funding mechanisms that we can braid together. So for some students who may qualify, there may be some state funding that would be available. For other families who have means, they are interested and able and willing to pay. And then there's a way that we can, through all of that, figure out a way that we can sustain the program. So we will initially be using the funding from the federal recovery dollars, but ultimately we'll be able to transition to a more a program that will sustain itself. That's the idea.
And I know, just for one follow-up, I know there's so many details to come forward with a huge effort like this, but when we think about the tutoring opportunities for all students, it's not just a part of the aftercare, before care, it could be during the day as well, right? There's different ways in which kids could intersect with that tutoring, depending on what their day looks like. Is that correct?
That's correct, and depending on the need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm just so excited to see this, and you know, I think we made such a huge effort during distance learning to support our kids, but we all know that all across the country is just really hard on specifically academics for kids. They probably maybe learned resilience and technology and how to, some other things, and how to make sacrifices, but you know, their book learning, as we say, probably suffered, and this is just a great start to figuring out how to support them to catch up.
Yes, and I also think it's important for folks to know that students across the country and in many districts, including in districts across Oklahoma, are struggling during the pandemic. This is not born out of just the fact that we've been in distance learning, and we are certainly not going to say that distance learning isn't harder than being in school in person, even during a pandemic, but it is not solely because of that. Being a student, living life as a young person, or any person for that matter, during the pandemic has been extraordinarily hard, and academics have suffered for students across the board. Dr. Griffin, and then we'll go to Board Member Keller.
Can you go back to slide 1 or 2? One of your first slides. That's it. I had a conversation with a high-level administrator of Tulsa, of a large school system this weekend about public schools in America. And so everything we say could be addressed to public school number 32 in New York City or someplace in California, but we have to focus on TPS. So while I focus on TPS, keep in mind we could talk about all of America. Implied in this, one-on-one support to help every high school senior for full graduation. Implied but not emphasized is the word learning. It should say one-on-one support to help every high school senior learn so he or she can fulfill graduation requirements. The machine works, and I've taught for a long, long time, more than any of you. There's a pressure to graduate students at the doctoral level, at the master's level, at the high school level, and teachers feel that pressure from administrators when they say, we got to get this graduation rate up. We've got to focus on learning. I would rather see a student learn and not graduate than graduate and not learn. So I think everybody implies it when they say academics. The most exciting thing here is tutoring, but I think we have to always emphasize that word learning the skills. That's where we're weak in reading, math, everything, in all schools. So we can't put pressures on teachers just to fulfill the graduation requirements. They feel the pressure. Students have to learn. And again, this is at every level. I feel it from the places I teach at the university level. Oh, you can't give a student a C. They've paid their tuition, you know. So let's always in all our presentations talk about learning first, even if we use the word academics or tutoring, whatever. It's learn, learn, learn.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. We appreciate that feedback and completely agree. It's something that we talk about quite a lot on our teams, and the importance not only to graduate students, but to make sure that when they graduate that they are prepared. And it's why we have a chief learning officer instead of a chief academic officer. It is our focus. I actually had a great conversation today with Dr. Goodson at Tulsa Community College about our collaboration to make sure that our students are fully prepared, those who choose to, and many of our students do, to take advantage of Tulsa Achieves and go on to Tulsa Community College for their programming. And so appreciate that feedback. Definitely agree with that.
And I understand that academics and scholars believe that, and I don't believe that Dr. Johnson or anybody else doesn't believe that, but I'm saying we've got to put it in our vocabulary, our vocabulary, and emphasize the word.
Thank you. Board Member Keller.
Thank you, Dr. Goose. I was wondering if Dr. Johnson, I had two questions. I was wondering if Dr. Johnson could go into a little more detail around our Operation Graduation and the boot camps in the Twilight Academy and such.
Definitely.
Thank you for that question, Board Member Keller. So I'll just start off with how it's listed here. So Operation Graduation really gives our students an additional set of time that they can actually work on completing credits. So when we go straight to the Twilight Academy, it's students having the opportunity to have maybe like from a 5:30 until 8:30 time to be engaged with a teacher, to have additional supports to actually complete their coursework. And so that's pretty much what the Operation Graduation summation is for Twilight Academy. The boot camps and the one-on-one supports are supports we've given over the years, which is being very intentional about going over students' course of study, making sure that they are enrolled in the correct coursework, making sure that communication is happening between student and teacher, making sure students are attending class, being present, learning and completing all of their subject matter so that they can actually finish the requirements. And that's the same with our senior boot camp. It's just when school has ended for the majority of our students or all of our students, then school begins right after that for students who still need to complete some credits. So I would say that's around the end of May and June time is when we typically have those boot camps for seniors to continue to work so that they can get it done.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. That brings up a kind of maybe a tangent. I can't speak today. I apologize. It's Monday. Could you tell us a little bit about the work that's being done to recover our dropout students? I know that that's something that we do as a district every year, but I'm sure there's intentional focus being placed on it this year. That was not my second question, by the way. Sorry. I have one more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just jump in and say that there's been a concerted effort on the part of not only school teams standing up what they call wellness teams, what we call wellness teams, which is to take care of the entire wellness need of the child, the academic, social, emotional needs, which includes attendance and finding students who are no longer showing up on our rosters. So we have that happening at the site level. In addition to that, we have what's called our network support teams, where district office staff work very closely with our school teams in order to look at data, review which students are no longer with us, figuring out a plan on how to locate those students, and working very closely with the accountability office in order to find them. So that's been very successful for us to utilize data to then locate and find out what's happening with our families and our students. And in addition, we've done just the good old fashioned calling the numbers that we have on file and locating our students and finding different ways to find out where they are. And so we have coined a lot of that is let's find our students, let's bring them back home into TPS. And so we've had a concerted effort to not only reach the student, but then get them, of course, back enrolled and then get the supports that they need. And so that's been a great cross-functional effort of various team members in Tulsa Public.
And I just will add that social media is often a tool that that school teams and district teams are using to look for students as well, and other students can be helpful too. I also think it's just so important to understand that, you know, dropout, the term dropout connotes something to people. And I think it's important to understand that, again, this year is, has been extraordinarily unusual for everyone. And that includes for our families. This was not just a public health crisis, it was also an economic crisis. And we have had students who have needed to work to help their families make ends meet and stay in their home and keep their electricity on. And so what we want to do is make sure that when we are locating our students, that we are not only encouraging them to come back to school, but also making sure that they understand that the structure of their finishing school or staying in school doesn't have to look the same as they may believe that it has to look, and that we will work with them and collaborate with them to determine a plan for their continuing their academic experience and their learning that fits with their needs as well. And so it's much more complex than I think sometimes people realize, and not as these aren't students just sitting around playing video games. These are students who've been through an extraordinarily difficult year. Our school leaders and their teams have been working incredibly hard to locate students all year long. But now that we're back, there's something different for them to offer to students. So. And then you had one more, you said?
I did, thank you. To the opposite end of the spectrum with our incoming PKers, I've had a couple of parents ask about a Jumpstart Academy, for lack of a better word, for our incoming PK. I was wondering if that had been discussed at all. I know that the thing the district, I was told rather, that's the thing the district used to do years ago. And I didn't know if that was considered in the discussion around this, or if it was even a possibility.
You're saying for students who will be in pre-K?
Yes.
I believe we're focusing on rising kindergartners, our current pre-K students and up. Dr. Johnson, I don't know if you want to correct me on that, but I'll say that's our focus and for these efforts. But I appreciate the call out, especially knowing that that was something that we've done in the past, and we can certainly work with Kelly Kane and our early childhood team to see what else we could do there. Dr. Griffin.
Ms. Keller. Thank you. Since we're talking about student in a vague way, can you give us the most recent student count, in person, virtual, and missing? Whatever the most recent is.
Yeah, I cannot give you that off the top of my head, Dr. Griffin, but we can certainly.
Can one of your staff members, somebody should know that. I would think every day you know those numbers.
Well, somebody on the team, Dr. Griffin, knows those numbers every single day. That doesn't mean that that person is present in the board meeting tonight. I'm sure if they are, they'll speak up. I can tell you that we had about the numbers that of students who were in distance learning, the number of students who were enrolled in the virtual academy have remained pretty consistent. The number of students that we have enrolled in the district overall, we've seen an increase in our enrollment in the past 2 weeks of hundreds of students. And I'm certainly willing to bring back to you a full report on where our students are and even more about the work that we're doing to locate them.
I mean, just like we get COVID data every meeting, I think the board would be interested in that too. I think we should get student numbers every meeting.
Mm-hmm. That's certainly something we can do. That concludes our staff report this evening. Madam President, I want to thank Mr. Robles and Dr. Johnson and all of the team for not only the work how it was represented tonight, but also all the work that goes on behind it.
Thank you. And that brings us to reports from members of the board. I would like to start. I'm super excited because the Webster boys basketball team is headed to the state tournament. And this is something I was super excited about last year. And I know they were super excited about last year, and then it got canceled. And so even though I can't be there in person because I'm not going to ball games, I will be cheering for you guys in your quest to not only represent your team this year, but your teammates who didn't have the opportunity to participate last year and then graduated. So I'm super proud of you guys and wish you the best of luck. In addition to that, I would like to bid farewell to Mr. Delgadillo, who is joining us tonight for his final board meeting. And I have had the privilege of working on the finance committee since I joined the board. So we've spent a decent amount of time together. And I have to say that when I was assigned to finance, I was not happy because it's just not super exciting, although it's important. But I will say that Mr. Delgadillo does a great job of dumbing it down just enough to help me understand what we're dealing with. And I also took a finance class, by the way, before I started, so that helped. A school finance, which may be why I was dreading it so much when I was assigned to the committee. But Mr. Delgadillo does such a great job for us and is incredibly accessible, very thorough, and great at explaining all of the information we need to know in a way that we can truly understand. And I would be remiss to not point out that I will miss the really bad jokes that Mr. Delgadillo likes to share with us. One of which is that he's on page 2 of his 75 slide deck. So anyway, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our time working together, and you will be greatly missed from my perspective. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure someone will pick up the jokes on the running decks. That'd be
you need
great.
to make sure you have a joke before we're finished with our board comments. So Dr. Griffin?
No pressure.
It goes to whatever Vice President Shriver is going to say.
I just wanted to quickly say that I second Stacy's or board president Woolley's comments. Noberto never was like, oh my God, I cannot believe they're asking this question. He was always super just gentle with us and really helped us learn, and thorough and understanding, and no question that he could not accommodate or get the answer to. And we're going to miss you. He brought a teacher with him when he came, so we're going to lose a TPS teacher too. But family calls, and I think we learned a lot in this last year about where we all need to be and what's important to us. And so we understand, miss you, but know that Tulsa loves you, and I hope that you'll speak highly of it when you're gone, because we will definitely miss you and everything that you've contributed while you've been here. And yeah, your dad jokes too, but just mostly you and just your kindness and really smarts, but just delivered that in such a gentle way to all of us. So appreciate that. And I did want to say one other thing in my board report this evening. I wanted to encourage all our families that you can file your taxes for free right now through getyourrefundtulsa.org. And there is about 20% of Tulsa families that don't file their taxes and then miss out on their earned income tax credit, which is something that if you file your taxes and you're in the right bracket, make less than $60,000, you are going to get. And especially if you're a single parent or parents with young children, your average credit is $2,600. It is a cash back credit. to you, and then you turn around and spend that in Tulsa in our economy. So it's a great deal for us. The max is about 5,600. And so again, if you go to get your refund, tulsa.org, you can find out where you can go and have someone help you upload, but you can also upload your documents at home if you have a phone and a camera, and it'll get you in a queue, and then you'll have a professional tax preparer, and it's completely free. And then you'll get a refund either via direct deposit or in the mail within like 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a great deal, and it's a great way to get that cash back on all your payroll taxes and everything. That in that bracket, some people are not getting, anything back, and it doesn't seem like it's worth it to file your taxes. But those child care tax credits, earned income tax credit, are yours. Take advantage of them, because that money can really, I know, make an impact on people's lives. And by doing it for free versus going to a pay preparer, you're going to get that full refund. And the average is $2,600, which is just a really meaningful amount. So go to getyourrefundtulsa.org, and you'll see all the information about many different ways that you can access that free service.
Thank you very much. Mr. Croissant.
Yes, and unfortunately, President Woolley, you beat me to my March Madness start of my announcement, and I do want to congratulate the Edison boys, and I believe also Memorial boys, Rogers girls, if I'm missing someone, just all of our TPS teams heading to state. Good luck, and it's an opportunity, obviously, last year not having the state tournament for them to finish out their season. But my announcement actually is for the teams that didn't get to finish their seasons, almost their entire seasons last year. That's all of our TPS spring sports. So that's golf, tennis, baseball, track. They're getting an opportunity to get started right now. They're out playing games. They are practicing. They're working really hard. So I'm just really excited for all of them, and especially for my personal love, soccer. So I wanted to congratulate the Edison boys soccer team for winning the Edison Green and White tournament over the weekend, which I helped to start. And that just really means a lot to me and to Coach Rogers. And congratulations to those boys. And lastly, speaking of soccer, my son's team won their first game this weekend, predominantly TPS students. But FC Tulsa, our USL Pro team, is promoting the Tulsa Dream League, which wants to bring in students from our TPS elementaries to participate in a spring Tulsa Dream League for soccer. And if any of our TPS schools are interested in participating, again, another one of our community partners, with that, if they want to do that, contact the Tulsa Dream Center at 918-734-8993 or mvasquez at tulsadreamcenter.org. So get out there and play.
I didn't mention Memorial because, duh, they're going to state.
Pastor Marshall.
This weekend, I had the opportunity to attend the funeral services of two of our most dedicated and community servants that worked with our children. Saturday morning, I attended the service of Mr. Keith Miller, who was a member of the 100 Black Men of Tulsa. His face was seen all over the community, in and out of our schools. Some days he was walking. Some days he had to push his walker and just take a seat and teach from that walker. But he was vigilant in his love and concern for the young men in the community and our students. On Saturday afternoon, I attended the service of Mr. Paul Taylor, who worked diligently with supporters of families with sickle cell to work with our sickle cell students of this district. He was a face that we always saw at the summer program, the back to school bash, the winter wonderland to ensure that children had toys. He was there standing out in the cold in December when we were handing out food and toys to families. He made sure that traffic got in and out in an orderly fashion.
So I wanted to mention those two community giants that we laid to rest on this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Marshall. Okay, in summary, I have noted that Dr. Gist has offered to bring back a future staff report on the TPS Tulsa Tech programs, and also that Dr. Griffin has requested follow-up on numbers regarding students. If there's anything that I've missed during tonight's meeting, please send those requests individually in an email to me with a copy to Ms. Bazone so we can be sure that the administration gets all the information back to board members as requested. That brings us to citizens' comments. I want to thank our speakers who signed up to speak tonight under citizens' comments. As we have stated before, each speaker will have 5 minutes to speak, and per district policy, the board will not engage in dialogue with speakers. Further, each speaker should be mindful to stay on topic for which they have been approved to speak. In addition to this reminder, I want to make a particular caution tonight, and that is to remind you that this section of our meeting is intended to be a productive forum for public input on the district's work, whether the input be positive, negative, or neutral. That said, it is not intended to be a forum for the public to spread malicious misstatements when they know these statements are false. When there is no doubt that a person's misstatements are intended to malign and mislead, it may cause us or others to pursue all available and appropriate actions either during the meeting or after. Our first speaker this evening is Ms. Melissa Remington, who signed up to speak about conflicts of interest for the board.
Board, how does making citizens' comments at 9 p.m. encourage any kind of community involvement? You know what's interesting? Every single conflict of interest that the public has brought forward with the grievances is with organizations continuing to do business with the district that claims that they want equity. There is nothing equitable about those of you sitting in board and in executive leadership roles that continue to operate in your position with these conflicts that work for these organizations or your spouses that work for them, Deborah Guest. Do we have the best interest of funding continuing these contracts with these nonprofits that put their staff on our boards? Do we have the proper screens in place to protect the district from the appearance of a conflict? If this board really is willing to allow the district to not follow their own policies on conflicts of interest. So I ask this board again, where is the public supposed to go when the board does not follow the district accountability for their own policies of 1102? What has the public actually paid for with an attorney that refuses to make a written opinion on this? And where can we find the policies and the procedures written out to file grievances against these elected officials? This is now the second public comment that we have made asking this board to address conflicts. There are several news stories out there that are addressing that right now about Dr. Gist, who sits there and does not look at the public when they are speaking. I find this to be incredibly disrespectful, and we will continue to talk to our legislators about your behavior.
Thank you, Ms. Remington. Our next speaker this evening is Ms. Marcia Campbell, who signed up to speak to conflict of interest of TPS board member Judith Barba Perez. Ms. Campbell?
Judith Barber, I'm sorry that you are not here with us today so that I can feel your spirit, because I do believe in the energy and the power of the spirit. I am Marcia Francine Campbell. I am a lifetime resident of Tulsa and one of the many experimental subjects of Tulsa Public Schools integration plans from the 1960s. And that plan still is in play today in District 2. I am thankful for the education I received, built on the foundations of my immediate community, which included Carver and Booker T, which are both in District 2. Under the leadership of Ellis Walker Woods, I received an education that allowed me the opportunity and the educational growth to be able to stand here before you and speak to this subject. I am concerned about the lack of moral compass of this school board and the construct of the relationship that Tulsa Public Schools has with Tulsa Community Foundation, with its over 1,500 funds and assets of over $4 billion. Judith Barber, I want you to know that this is not about you or your desire to serve your community. You, like me, have nothing more than a continuum of the experiment by city leaders to control all aspects of the city of Tulsa. Ask yourself, Judith, am I a slave? A slave, according to Oxford's dictionary, is a person who is excessively dependent upon or controlled by something or another. And there is nothing in the city that Tulsa Community Foundation doesn't have its tentacles in. It's almost a horror story, a horror story. As I was planning my campaign strategy, I contemplated contacting your boss, Kurt Wester, the director of Growing Together, about the conflict of interest that exists between Tulsa Public Schools and his nonprofit organization that provides wraparound services for students who live near or attend Sequoia, Kendall Whittier Elementary School, and Will Rogers Junior and Senior High School within District 2. I decided not to contact him because surely you knew the school board seat you now hold was vacated by his wife, Tanya Wester. Whether you know that your employment with Growing Together would create a conflict of interest, I cannot say. But the people who supported your campaign financially had in their plan to seat someone who is excessively dependent upon or who could be controlled by generous campaign donors. In my African-American neighborhood, 20% of District 2, there are absolutely zero community schools. For children who live in my immediate neighborhood must attend schools outside of District 2, and they don't have a choice. I want to know who represents, we in District 2 and in my community, we are taxed without representation on this school board. Who represents my interests if my students were to attend Tulsa Public Schools? Who represents the interests of my children who must attend either McLean, Central, or Nathan Hale? Who represents us? Traditionally, historically, and metaphorically, at the end of the day, I would not call you enslaved. Myself, I am just a sharecropper, but it is the same thing. Judith, I hope that you find the moral compass to either resign from your position with Growing Together, because I'm sure that they will find you a job, or to resign your seat in District 2.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Our next speaker this evening is Mr. Leslie Kopp, who signed up to speak about wanting accountability from TPS in regards to the 14,000 reported failing students in the first semester. Mr. Kopp.
Good evening. I am here tonight to alert every board member that my family and I have been retaliated against by Superintendent Gist in this district. My son, all because my son's stepmothers and my involvement for being advocates with Parent Voice Oklahoma and wanting better and equal educational opportunities for every child. Before my son resumed in-person learning on February 23rd, I attended an in-person meeting at my son's school with Dr. Wallace, Johnson, Ms. Renz, and my child's principal, teacher, stepmom, myself, and my son. This meeting was to discuss implementing additional accommodations at school for my special needs son. We discussed ways that my son's teacher could improve communication with me, since I have not, and still to this very day, have not been receiving adequate communication. We also discussed a few additional accommodations to help ensure that my son's school was providing a learning experience that supports my son's mental disabilities. One of those accommodations was that my son's screen time would be limited to a total of 15 minutes per day or less, and would be for educational purpose only. On Friday, February 26th, my son's teacher did not provide that very accommodation. When I made my concerns known to my son's principal that very day by email, once my son's teacher responded to my concerns, I was able to see the communication that was taking place behind the scenes between my son's principal and teacher. In the last sentence of one of those emails from my child's teacher, she told the principal, and I quote, "I am not about to change how I present my instructions." Board Member Keller, I believe you have a copy of that email.
Mr. Coppett, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is not the topic on which you are approved to speak.
This all has something to do with the 14,000 failing students, because you guys are not wanting to communicate, your teachers are not wanting to communicate with myself, and that is a direct reason on why we have 14,000 failing students. And please don't interrupt me.
Mr. Kopp, it's my obligation as the president of the board to make sure we do not violate Open Meetings Act. I do not want to interrupt you, I can assure you. Because what is stated is that you're speaking to a specific item, it's my job to make sure you do.
Okay, the news stations have been alerted of the retaliation. The Governor Stitt has been alerted of the retaliation, and I hope to God that they do a news story over it, because you got to go, Superintendent Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Our next speaker this evening is Mr. Christopher Walsh, who signed up to speak about the potential donation of Park Elementary to facilitate ending veterans' homelessness. Mr. Walsh?
Hi. One of the comments that I heard tonight that I thought I had to respond to was the fact that one of the members was known because he always started with a joke. So I'd like to tell the latest COVID joke. But having had COVID and been healed, I wanted to state for the record, there's a 99% chance you won't get it. Anyway, that was the joke. We need to be able to laugh. I mean, 2020 has just been a train wreck in terms of what it's done to America, not just the school board and our kids, and it's just been a challenge. But I'm the guy that's determined to end veteran homelessness in Tulsa. Most of you have probably read my article where I met a homeless vet that was holding a sign, "Homeless vet, any help will do," in a freezing ice storm. And I took him in, had coffee, and said, "How come you're homeless?" And we got talking. And I now have an interview that's on our website with Brandon Sims, former Army Ranger that was deployed. So most of you, I think, are now aware of the need to provide some sort of community support for homeless vets. These are people that are honorably discharged combat vets that suffer PTSD or an addiction or whatever. And there's so much resource available to help them, but they do not have access to it, or they don't know that they do. I've met with so many veteran advocacy groups. I had on my PowerPoint a list of all the people that wanted me to come speak here tonight. The Coffee Bunker, the Veterans Alliance, Victory for Veterans at Victory Christian Center. And I was pleasantly surprised to see my prayer partner, John Huffines, up there giving a comment. I thought, wow, we've been praying together for 10 years. Go, John, go. Small world. But on a positive note, I got a friendly call on Saturday morning from Chris Hodges at the bond office. To make a really long story short, I spoke at City Council and said, what can be done about it? They said, well, what do you need, Mr. Walsh? I said, I need land. I've got a contractor that's agreed to pay my salary to build. There's a community in Kansas City that has pretty much eliminated veteran homelessness in Kansas City. It's called the Veterans Community Project. It's by vets, for vets, on the premise, the military premise of no man left behind. So to make a long story about, I said, just give me land and we'll build some, they call them tiny homes. They're like little cottages. But the heart of it isn't the tiny homes. That's just like a homeless tent village. What you need is a support network where when a guy comes into the program, that then he is developed a support network where there's already 600 permanent residents through the VA mental health thing for homeless vets. But the problem is when I talked to Dr. Horton about it, he said shelf life on a homeless vet in a permanent home is about 2 months tops. He said it's not a money problem. He said they get their disability check or they get their veterans benefits. We work with them and advocate for that. But he said as soon as they get their check, they hit the casino and boom. He said, but when you have the support network, suddenly the real life dynamic changes. So all of a sudden everybody knows check day is coming. And one of the guys says, hey, it's check day tomorrow. What are you doing? Well, I was going to go hit the casino. Oh, you were? How'd that work out for you last month, Bubba? He said, why don't we all go to Golden Corral and eat? And Saturday morning, let's get together and pay some bills. Well, suddenly you got a friend helping a friend and on a concept of no man left behind. And they develop a support network so that the average stay in the transitional housing community is between 3 and 18 months. So that now they can help them get a job, help them get life skills, help them get retrained. If they've got PTSD, VA counselors come in, there's a walk-in medical clinic planned, there's a dental clinic. And so what Chris said, he said, well, you know, how do you know there's not going to be some community kickback? So me and Tim Purnell, a Vietnam vet and Marine Corps, well, I just call him a Marine because a Marine never stops serving. They took an oath to the Constitution and they're Semper Fi, they're going to stand for this country forever. So Tim and I walked around Park Elementary and knocked on every door of somebody that was home on Saturday afternoon, talked to every resident we could. And I've got a list that was on my PowerPoint that I'm not quite allowed to show yet of all the residents that said, please do this. This would be great for the community. And you know, when I talked to the group that run the Veterans Community Project up in Kansas City, residents there were concerned, well, man, you get a homeless community in here, our property values are going to go down. And, you know, what about crime? But in the study of the community development model there, they took over an old drive-in movie theater. The exact opposite occurred, is that the crime rate went down. And in fact, the guy that I'm working with, Brandon Sims, this Army Ranger, has been homeless now for 4 years, just a heartbreak. But he's got PTSD. I mean, he just came out of boot camp and boom, they put him in Cosnovo.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Yeah, your 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Walsh, and you can always come back. Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Ms. Sarah Martinez, who signed up to speak to thank Hania Wester and welcome Hudith Barba to the board. Ms. Martinez.
Gracias. Despierten. Trying to wake up the interpreters here. Buenas noches and happy International Women's Day. Feliz Día del Internacional del Día de la Mujer. And I was glad to be here because I learned a lot. I'm sorry to hear about Norberto. Norberto, no te vayas, no nos abandones, mano. Haces falta. But we send you, you know, buen viaje. Dr. Gist, Madam President, and members of the board, thank you for letting me speak here. Just to, I've been participating on community advisory committees for TPS since Dr. Ballard. So I've been around for a while. Both my kids went to TPS. My son was in the East Central cross-country team that took state in 2009. So I'm just immediate past chair of the Greater Tulsa Area Hispanic Latinx Commission. I co-chair the Education Committee for that commission right now. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Guest and the board for your leadership and being courageous during this whole pandemic and leading us to the other side, we all hope. I'd also like to thank you for your support of the Commission's Tomas Rivera Award that we give out in May. We're just now going through nominations, and we've heard from Rogers, Hale High School, East Central, and Booker T. Washington. So we have nominees from all those schools, at least. I haven't gone through all the nominations yet, but so thank you very much for supporting that effort. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that the commission and the education committee on the commission were very supportive of Judith. I personally have known her since she was a new immigrant to Tulsa. She's always been intelligent, passionate, dedicated to serving the community. And the commission is, we're very, we recognize how important it is to have someone who speaks Spanish on the board, someone who's a new immigrant, someone who can represent a marginalized group of people that are in the school district. So we're very proud to have her on the board. We as a commission and a committee, we're thrilled to provide guidance and support to Judith as she serves. I'm grateful to her for stepping up, and she ran an enthusiastic, effective campaign, and for being dedicated to following Hanya Wester's fantastic example. We're very happy with Hanya, and she continues to serve on the commission also. And I'm also grateful to Judith for being passionate about leading and dedicated to learning and to working with our families. So thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. That brings us to superintendent's reports, presentations. Do you have a report for us tonight, Dr. Gist?
I do, Madam President. I have a few things, actually. I want to start, and I really regret addressing this because I've always believed that dignifying falsehoods with a response only brings them undeserved attention to those who perpetuate them. But sadly, due to unrelenting and inexplicable efforts, here we are. Both tonight and for some time, there are individuals who are actively spreading false information about purported conflicts of interest and unlawful conduct by me and also certain board members. These individuals should know their allegations are untrue, yet they continue to spread gross and inflammatory misstatements. They do so even though those mistruths injure the reputation of those they malign and steal hours and likely cumulative months at this point of our district's time and attention away from the children we serve and the teachers and the team we support. Tulsa should know the truth. First of all, both Ms. Barba and Ms. Wester were duly elected to their board seats by the voters in District 2. Neither own an interest in growing together, nor do their spouses. Further, neither Ms. Barba Perez nor Ms. Wester has participated in a vote approving a contract with Growing Together, an organization that has served the community since 2012, many years before either became a board member and also prior to my employment with the district. I do not speak for Ms. Barbara Perez, of course, although I have spoken to her about this. She, as Ms. Wester did, may abstain from any vote that she believes presents a conflict of interest for her. And doing so does not prevent her from serving effectively as a board member and representing District 2, as well as I'm sure she will. If she has any question about her employment creating even the appearance of a conflict, she may, and I'm sure she will, seek legal guidance to resolve these issues. Also, these individuals have continued to perpetuate misstatements, not only about board members, not only about me, but also about my family, namely my husband, who works for Bank of Oklahoma. As I shared publicly more than a year ago, my husband does not have any involvement with Tulsa's bond work at BOK since it is managed by another department at the organization. And although I am very proud of him, he is merely one of hundreds of vice presidents in that very large organization, an organization that has been the district's registrar and paying agent for its bond sales for many years before I came to Tulsa Public Schools. In fact, it was about 20 years before I came to the district. So notably, on that note, I want to say that I want to make sure that Tulsans are clear that the relatively small amount of BOK's compensation for this work, which is about $10,000 a year, is $40,000 below the district's policy-based threshold for competitive bidding. I do not suggest that seeking bids for future work is a bad idea. And in fact, I support that. And board leadership and I have talked to our team about doing this. We did that several weeks ago. But given the blatant falsehoods surrounding this issue, I can only conclude that there is not only an intention to malign here, but an active desire to badly mislead the public. So you will all know the truth surrounding this matter. I wanted to ensure that I spoke about it tonight, as I did last year. I will not be speaking about it again. Given the staggering amount of time these individuals have taken from the district's focus on children and families we serve, this is not just a matter of personal injury, but injury to the district as a whole. So moving on to something much more positive, today, as has been mentioned, is International Day of the Woman. And we want to start by acknowledging that, and I have the extraordinarily fortune to have some truly phenomenal female mentors and leaders across my life, starting, of course, with my own mama, Joyce Robertson Gist, who is right here in Tulsa. And I have the great pleasure of working, leading, and learning alongside the incredible women of this board, President Woolley, Vice President Schreiber, and board members Keller, Barbara Perez, and Marshall. Every woman on this board is a trailblazer in her own way, and I believe that as women in leadership roles, we have a responsibility to lift each other up, to lead with kindness, to be the kind of role models that our daughters, our nieces, and young women everywhere need and deserve. I'm grateful to each of you for stepping up to serve your community. This work can be incredibly challenging, but also profoundly rewarding. And Tulsa children and families, thank you for your service. Pastor Marshall, I just want to thank you for recognizing the services for Keith. This has been an extraordinarily challenging year of loss in so many different ways. And today I was at Trace Academy. The board knows well, and I'm sure Tulsa does too, that we lost our principal who passed away, Romeo Alford, there at Trace. And so I spent a little bit of time with the team there. Tremendous loss for us. I also want to recognize and celebrate another dedicated public servant who we very recently lost, Matt Livingood. Matt passed away over the weekend. He was a lifelong advocate of public education in Tulsa. He served on the board for nearly a decade. He actually served as the board's president in 2005, 2006, and 2006, 2007. And he spent the last 11 years as a teacher at street school. And in late February, he was moved to hospice care as he really was dedicated to finishing out the school year this year. He was an incredibly dedicated teacher. He really prioritized his students at all times. And I can't imagine anything more humbling or inspiring than that. On a personal note, Matt was a friend, someone I came to know early on in my superintendency and really respected. He was a great mentor. He also served on my teacher cabinet, and I've been keeping his family in my prayers, as I know other members of the board and many, many Tulsans are doing. And then I wanted to speak about Keith as well, Pastor Marshall, and I wanted to thank you for being the first person to so quickly let me know about Keith's unexpected passing. Keith Miller, as Pastor Marshall said, was a youth mentor and advocate. He was on the board of 100 Black Men. He was active with the McLean PTA. He was a member of the Tulsa Central Foundation Board. He put children first, as you said, Pastor, at all times, and just tirelessly served. And it's hard to find the words to talk about people like Keith, who are giants among men. And so I just want to say, just acknowledge his incredible service as well. I want to close with a reminder about the COVID-19 vaccination process that we've talked about tonight. Thanks to the incredible work of Tulsa Health Department, thousands of our team members have received at least their first vaccination shot, and we're continuing to share information. My commitment has been to ensure that every team member on Team Tulsa who wishes to be vaccinated has had that opportunity before I received the vaccine myself, and we're very, very close. So that'll be this week. So if anyone on Team Tulsa who does want to be vaccinated hasn't had the chance, please do let us know. If you're a member of the public who wants to be vaccinated, make sure to register at the Oklahoma State Department of Health's vaccination portal at vaccinate.oklahoma.gov. And then, as has been acknowledged, this is Chief Delgadillo's very last meeting with Team Tulsa. And after about 4 years of serving Tulsa children and families, Chief Delgadillo and his wife, Lily, have made the decision to relocate. And Norberto will be serving as the Chief Financial Officer with Portland Public Schools in Portland, Oregon. During the time he was with Tulsa Public Schools, Norberto led our district through Shaping Our Future, a community-centered budget redesign effort. He oversaw the restructure of the finance office to significantly improve direct services to schools. He continued to carefully and thoughtfully steward our financial portfolio to prioritize the needs of students in schools, even as we navigated multi-million-dollar reductions in state funding. Under his leadership, the role of the finance office has moved from that of compliance monitor to strategic service partner. And he leaves our team well positioned to carry forward his service-centered approach to fiscal management. With his transition, we have the opportunity to bring together two closely aligned divisions, finance and operations, under the leadership of Jorge Robles. We are excited about this opportunity for Jorge Robles, incredibly grateful to him for taking it on. And but with that, we certainly speak for, I know I speak for everyone to say that that the Delgadillo family, all of them, our chief financial officer, his wife, our teacher, and his two children, our students, will be greatly missed. And we are wishing all of them, Norberto, Lily, Sergio, and Diego, we're just wishing them all the best in Portland, and we love you very much. Basketball, yay, Norberto. It's been mentioned, I just wanted, so yes, all those team mentioned, and also Rogers boys. I just wanted to make sure, I think that's everybody if we add Rogers boys, and big games this week, concluding on Saturday with the finals. So thank you for those shout outs. And that concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you, though I have to say I'm disappointed we didn't get a joke out of that. I'm
confident that you could if you really want.
There are no non-routine items tonight.
Madam President?
Yes.
In honor of Mr. Delgadillo, I have a 100 deck stack I'd like to present.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Griffin. That was perfect.
Dr. Griffin, we are going to time you.
Ms. Burke, is there any new business?
Other than us capturing Norberto and making him stick around for another 4 years, I guess not.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to announcements. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Monday, March 22nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll call for the vote. Pastor Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Barbara Perez?
C.
Ms. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Croissant?
Aye.
Ms. Keller?
Aye.
Dr. Griffin?
C.
And I. Meeting adjourned.
All right, we are down.